Good evening. Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Please bear with us. This is, we're not here. We're not here every month. Thank you so much. Good evening. Welcome to the Lower Moreland Township Board of Commissioners meeting. We have an exciting meeting tonight with a lot of great things planned. I'd like to start off by saying how important public input, your comments, and concerns are to all of us. If you'd like to make a public comment, please come up to the podium in the front of the room. State your name and address for the record. Even if we know you, we do know a lot of people. It's a small community. We need your name for the record. Thank you very much. Please direct your comments to the entire Board of Commissioners. If you cannot hear us, please raise your hand, either on Zoom or in the room, and we will try to speak up. Please direct your comments again to the entire Board of Commissioners, not just one person. We want to provide meaningful information to everyone. In the interest of everyone's time, we cannot engage in long debates or dialogue. As such, we will keep comments to 3 minutes. I would also remind everyone they can talk to any of their commissioners outside of our public meetings to further express any concerns or questions they might have. Please comment on agenda items in front of the board at that time. We have 27 items on our agenda this evening. If you have any additional comments or concerns, we do have public participation on non-agenda items. You can address the board at that time. Finally, may we ask each and every one of you to please be kind and respectful. Thank you so much. So this evening, it's the Lower Moreland Board of Commissioners advertised and stated monthly meeting, June 14th, 2024. May I ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, give me a minute. I have to get my tablet. Thank you. This evening, we have Jim Adams with us from PLEAC, Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Coalition. He's in attendance with us. Welcome, Jim. And he is going to present to Lower Moreland Police Department. He is going to present with our Vice President and Board of Commissioners, our Chair of Public Safety Committee, Joseph CANALE, an accreditation to our police department. Commissioner CANALE and Vice President, please join. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your agenda. And if I can take just a brief minute, 3 minutes, I'll try to keep it at that seriously. I just want to briefly mention to not only the board, but also to those in attendance, what this certificate represents. This is more than just a sticker to put on a police car. A lot of hard work by your agency went into this, and it started a journey a long time ago when the agency made a decision to commit to accreditation by looking at our 125 standards, 125 best practices in providing professional law enforcement services to the community that they cover. And they take a look at our standards, take a look at their policies, procedures, special operations manual, and see, do they have things in place, written directives that address all of those 125 standards. takes quite a bit of time. Some agencies take several years. I'm not sure how long it took your agency. But then fast forward, they go through what we call a mock assessment where they arrange for accreditation managers to come in, do a thorough review of their agency and the standards, and then whenever they feel ready, they contact my office at the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association. We assign 3 assessors to come on site, spend 2 days going through their policy manual, going through those 125 standards, making sure that they have written directives in place to meet all of those standards. Actually, it's a little bit of a misnomer as far as me stating 125 standards, because if you look at the standards, many of those standards have embedded in them substandards. And really, when you count them all up, there's 370 best practices that this certificate represents that your police agency has met those standards. They also have to have what are called proofs of compliance. It's one thing to have a great policy manual in place, but if the staff are not following the policy manual, it's really not doing any good. So they have to have a minimum of 2 proofs of compliance for each one of those 370 best practices. So here we are tonight, recognizing all the hard work that went into it. Some people ask, well, gee, what does this really represent, or what's the value? The insurance companies that insure liability policies for municipal police departments, their studies are starting to show that police departments, when you compare accredited police departments to non-accredited police departments of similar size, the accredited police departments are getting sued less often than the non-accredited police departments. And also too, when agencies do get sued and accredited police departments get sued, the payouts are significantly less. So your police department is one of your big risk managers for your municipality, and hopefully your insurance company has been notified that your police department is accredited. This is not a sticker for life. In 3 years, we'll be going through the same exercise again. Every year, they have to do a self-assessment and send in an annual report to my office. And then in the 3rd year, I'll be sending out a new team of assessors and put them through the entire exercise again, and it'll be determined whether or not they get reaccredited. Right now, we have approximately 1,100 municipal police departments in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Your police department is one of 175. About 15% of the police departments are accredited. So it's quite an achievement. I can spend a lot of time up here talking. I'm probably about at your 3-minute limit, which I want to respect. But seriously, anybody in the audience, the board, if you want to take a look and get more accreditation information, just go to Pennsylvania Chiefs website. It's a public-facing webpage. There's an accreditation tab. Those 125 standards are all posted publicly. You can read all of them and see what your agency is actually complying with. There's a lot of additional information there. And if you have any questions about accreditation, you have resident experts in-house that you can ask about accreditation. But seriously, my information is there. So at this time, without any further ado, I'd like to call up soon-to-be chief, probably one of the last official functions you'll have as acting chief, to publicly present him, your agency, and you, the board, because without the board being behind the police department, I doubt they'd be able to accomplish it. So it's my pleasure to publicly present the certificate recognizing accreditation to your police department.
Next, I just want to let the public know that are attending this evening. We have next to me, Will Ottinger, Esquire from Grimm, Bean and Thatcher. Solicitor Rice is not with us this evening. He's on vacation. And we welcome Will Ottinger this evening. You're welcome, Will. Next, the chair recognizes Joseph CANALE, Chair of the Public Safety Committee. Commissioner Canale.
Thank you, President KURITZ. The first item on my agenda for this evening is the Chief of Police Employment Agreement. The Board of Commissioners interviewed the current LMPD Lieutenant Scott Smith on Friday, May 31st for our now vacant Chief of Police position. Based on the board's feedback and working with the township manager, Scott and the manager have enthusiastically recommended, it has been enthusiastically recommended by the board that Scott be appointed Chief of Police. So, Chris, do you want to cover any of the agreement, or are we going to just forego that and go to the swearing in?
So rather than give a full comprehensive rundown of it, it is our standard employment agreement that we have done for prior chiefs of police. So nothing new to report. If anybody has any specific questions of me, please feel free to contact my office.
Any questions from the public on this? Anything from the board? I'd like a motion to approve the employment, where I will make the motion to approve the employment agreement with Scott C. Smith to become the Chief of Police of Lower Moreland Township.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to appoint Scott Smith to become Chief of Police of Lower Moreland Township. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Chief
Chief
Scott
Smith.
Smith. And I believe,
Tom up here to make it
yes,
official?
I believe our
There we
District
go.
Justice, Tom Mert, is here to swear Chief Scott Smith in.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be here to swear in Chief Smith. Chief, can we ask you to put your left hand on the Bible? Raise your right hand. I, Scott C. Smith, Sr.,
I, Scott C. Smith, Sr.,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America,
the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America,
the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the Township of Lower Moreland.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the Township of Lower Moreland.
I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity and integrity,
I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity and integrity,
and I pledge to uphold, obey, and enforce the law
and I pledge to uphold, obey, and enforce the law
without consideration
without consideration
to a person's race, color, sex,
to a person's race, color, sex,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
age, national origin, ancestry,
age, national origin, ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability.
I will obey the rules, regulations, policies, and procedures
I will obey the rules, regulations, policies, and procedures
governing sworn members of the Lower Moreland Township Police Department.
governing sworn members of the Lower Moreland Township Police Department.
Congratulations. Before I take the picture with it, one of the things that strikes me, I know I'm getting old, but how youthful the chief looks and all the police officers that we swear in. So congratulations, Chief.
My first time getting to stand up here. The old chief is here. He used to hog all the limelight from me. So I just want to thank everybody that's here, the retirees, all my family, all my friends, all the commissioners, as well as the manager for giving me the chance and giving me this opportunity. It's what I've wanted since I first became a police officer. Every one of the officers that's here and all of my family, you've all made this possible and supported me through all this. So missing holidays and all that kind of stuff, and being with me through all the tough times at work and the good times at work. So I really appreciate everyone being here, and I want to thank you all.
From the board, let's
All right, next up on my agenda tonight is the conditional offer to police officers. The Civil Service Commission certified the attached new hire list on May 2nd, 2024. LMPD has 3 vacancies to fill based on Chief Scarato's retirement, Detective Halada's retirement, and the agreement with the Lower Moreland Township School District to add a second school resource officer. Staff's recommendation to extend the conditional offer letter to the top 3 candidates on the attached list. With this authorization, the offer will be extended and each candidate will complete a physical and psychological examination. When each candidate is successfully passing these exams, we will have each officer begin training in late June and ask the board to finalize the probationary appointments at the July 9th meeting. The 3 recommended candidates are John Krasinski, Javon Brown, and Joseph Capanello. Soon to be, current Chief Smith will be available right now to answer any questions. Any questions from the board? Anything from the public? No? Any comments you want to add, Scott?
No, I think we have a competitive process for our hiring. They go through a physical agility test, a written test, and then an oral interview. These were 3 very good officers that finished 1, 2, and 3. I called them officers because they are currently officers elsewhere and are coming to Lower Moreland because I think they've heard about the great stuff we do here. So 2 of them are SEPTA officers currently. One is a Philadelphia police officer, and they're coming here because they've heard, I think, a lot of the great things we do here, and they're very happy and very proud to get started with us in the next couple of weeks. So.
Right. So I would like to make a motion for conditional employment offers for John Krasinski, Javon Brown, and Joseph Capanello.
Second.
Motion was moved and seconded to make conditional employment officers a motion was moved and seconded to make conditional employment officers to John Krasinski, Javon Brown, and Joseph Capilano. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, commissioners. Motion's passed.
All right, I'm going to change the order for a minute so you can get out of here quicker. Could I get the chief of police report, please, Scott?
Yes, so I submitted the report for the June 11th meeting here. So the highlights for us, did have another busy month. We had over 1,400 calls for service throughout the month since the last meeting. Traffic safety officers were quite busy. We had several traffic studies that they handled, speeding through neighborhoods. Not a lot of signage that was needed, but they were hopefully rectifying this through presence enforcement, et cetera, keeping our neighborhoods safe. The crime-related matters, we did have an uptick in some package thefts as well as robbery. One of them did involve the illegal delivery of gun parts, and a separate one that was very much related to that one. We do have 1 arrest and 1 is pending the ID. In one of those cases, we also did recover a stolen vehicle that had been stolen right before the theft of the packages and robbery. Uptick in the theft of mail again, so just a reminder for everyone, just keep in mind if you can hand your mail directly to your mail carrier or deliver your letters and put them in the post office inside, it's a lot safer for you to do that because we do have people that are committing these phishing scams where they'll pull the mail out of the mailbox and then defraud you. So several dog-related issues this month again. So I just encourage everybody to know the dog law. You should always have your dogs secure, leashed on your property. It does cause a nuisance to some of our other residents, so it's very important to be good residents for each other. Another crime-related thing, we did have our tobacco compliance checks. This is run through the PA Department of Health and the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania. We did have, unfortunately, 5 violations in the township at some of our establishments that sell tobacco products. All were cited for the violations, and it was not just one location. These were 5 different locations. Generally speaking, we don't get these very often where they actually have a violation. But this PA Department of Health and the Council of Southeast PA work hard to make sure that the businesses are following the laws and the regulations that they're supposed to and keeping these tobacco products out of our hands of our minor children and juveniles. So hopefully this will help them keep it safe and not be doing this any longer. We did have some positive results from this. One of the businesses, the day after we cited them, they did have to turn someone down and it turned into a disturbance. However, it just does show that they're hopefully learning their lesson and following the procedures they're supposed to when these things happen. A couple community events that we had this month. We did have 2 great canine fundraisers. One, a local business, the Cannonball Car Storage, ran a fundraiser for the Lower Moreland Police Department, specifically our canine unit, as well as the Bernathen Police Department. And then we also had a local golf outing where they chose to give back to our canine program. So all these things help continue to support our canine program, which has been completely funded through fundraising, donations, all through the generous community, has made this happen for the last 4 years. And just a reminder, our event is coming up June 22nd from 9 to 12. That's our canine fundraiser that we're hosting. I know Officer O'Neill is here. Kermit's probably not inside because he'd be barking. He's probably barking out in the car right now, but they will be there. They'll be doing some canine demonstrations, food trucks, raffles, face painting, balloon artists. So bring everybody out. It'll support our canine unit. It's a great thing. And again, that's June 22nd, right here at the high school in the parking lot. This month, we also had 8 of our officers run and complete the Broad Street Run together. They all did very well at that. Several of them are in here today. Again, we're a big push towards physical fitness, and this is just our officers just showing how much they really buy into that and support that and want to be fit and then support each other as well. We did have our second of our parent cyber safety presentations, another big success. And we also had our Pine Road second grade tour that I know Denise is a big part of that. And it was a great event. All the kids love it. We got a big stack of thank yous, very comical to read sometimes, but it's very good to give back to the community and let specifically these second graders see how our entire community works. So it was a great event overall. Any questions with the report or concerns?
Any questions from the board, from the public? Congratulations again, Chief.
Thank you.
You want to take a 2-minute break?
Let's go first.
Absolutely. See you, Tom. Do you want Scott? I think Tom is looking for you. All right, we're gonna pick this back up right now. The next item on my agenda is the Pierce Enforcer Aerial Tower Financing Option. The Board of Commissioners authorized staff to engage with the TD Bank for financing the Pierce Enforcer Aerial Tower in the amount of $1.1 million at a rate of 4.68%. Since then, staff has been working with TD Bank to process the necessary engagement agreements, and a requirement of the loan docs is a resolution formally authorizing the execution of the agreement. Attached to this memo is the resolution required by TD Bank. Due to the timing of when the township received the loan docs, Solicitor Rice was only able to provide a brief review. Therefore, staff is requesting that the Board of Commissioners authorize the resolution and agreement pending Solicitor Rice's favorable opinion to move forward with the agreement. Any questions on this from the board?
No, I just wanted to, well, EJ's not here, but thank her because I know at one point we were at 5%. So it's a good interest rate. Chris, could you relay that to her?
Especially in
Absolutely.
today's environment. Yeah, without doubt. Any questions from the public? No? I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 24-33 to authorize EJ Lee and Christopher Hoffman to enter into an agreement with TD Bank for the financing of the Pierce Enforcer Aerial Tower at a rate of 4.68% for a total loan amount of $1.1 million, pending the favorable approval of Solicitor Rice.
Second.
Motion was moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2433. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The ayes have it. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion's passed.
Next on my agenda is the Chief of Emergency Services update. Chief Showmaker, please come on down.
All right, I've turned this, it's on, okay. Good evening, everyone. You want me to do my report first, Joe, or you want to save it for a little bit? Kind of leads into things. All right, for my monthly report, you'll see a number of times where I talk about reviewing stats and reviewing information from calls from the two organizations, the Huntington Valley Fire Company and the Brenathan Fire Company. So I'm not going to go through all the bullet points that I have there. For the calls of interest, so I want to knock those out, get those out of the way. I'm going to go through the Brenathan calls first. For medical emergency calls in Brenathan for the month of May, 18. In Lower Moreland, 121. Other than the two townships outside of 38. And for total for the month, 177 EMS calls for a year total of 837. And for fire calls in Brenathan, they ran 2 calls in Brenathan Borough. Lower Moreland was 23, 2 others for a total of 27. And year to date, they're at 162 calls for the year. The Huntington Valley Fire Company calls in Lower Moreland Township, 26. In Brenathan Borough, they ran 2 times, 1 call other for a total of 29 calls, and they are at 171 for the year. Just to mention on the EMS, we're on target for another 2,000 plus calls for the year. The reason I'm up here actually tonight is in reference to a memo I presented to the manager to address and update you a little bit on where we are with certain things. One of them being a report that I've been working on that I'm looking to present, or at least getting in your hands by either the end of this month or early next month. I'm still waiting on a little bit of data, and I have some interviewing to do of a couple of the members from one of the fire departments. The report you have, or not the report you have in front of you, but the update you have in front of you, the first section talks about response and manpower. And basically what I'm doing is I'm asking the board to review what I've placed in this document, and I am using a metric to measure our performance against, which is NFPA 1720, which I think I explained to you the last time we got together. Basically, that's a national minimum standard for what response to a emergency call, fire emergency should be for a certain criteria that we would fall under. They identify that criteria and they place us in what's called an urban area. And under urban area, the minimum requirement that they've established as a national standard is 15 personnel on scene within 9 minutes from the time of dispatch, 90% of the time. Now, I feel that that's a pretty liberal standard. I think it's a mark that can be met, but I will also preview that with, there are departments in this country that just can't come close to that, even though they fall in the same category. But for our purposes and what I've been actually doing to review the stats, I've been using this benchmark, but it's the authority that has jurisdiction that actually establishes that. So tonight, I wanted the board's opinion on whether or not they agree upon that standard. Last night, I did the same at the Brenhampton Borough Council meeting. They unanimously approved that standard as what we want to target for our benchmark. So that's number one on my list. You can also see I included some quick data just to give you a quick idea of where we currently stand on the Huntington Valley side. The report is going to be a very comprehensive report. All the statistical data will be included in that report for your review that I'm actually reviewing. It'll be the information from Huntington Valley Fire Company, from their reporting system, as well as the Brenhampton Fire Company EMS from their reporting system. There's two separate reporting systems. There's a learning curve for me on both of them that I'm trying to get familiar with. There's some limitations on each of them. The one's very difficult to get the reporting and the analytics out of, but we're working on that, and that's why I don't have all the information yet. But as you can see, some of the percentages that I've addressed here are not even close to those benchmarks that we're looking to try to meet. With that said, there's been some great improvement over the 5 years in the Huntington Valley Fire Company where they've been able to increase their percentages of in-service time, but we're still falling quite short on that. I think a lot of it's attributed to the fact the improvement that we target we can see from the graphs, and you're going to see those when you review the report, that a majority of our calls, or the heaviest times for our call volume, are 6 a.m. in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. From 6 to 6, starting in 2020, they started the stipend program. Well, the stipend program is when we start to see an improvement in the response times and the in-service times that we have, as well as the manpower. So that's attributed to that. On the Brenhampton side, we have predominantly career staff, and up in the Brenhampton side, they're meeting the times 100% of the time, but we're falling short on the manpower stats. They're a little bit below the average, and that's where we're going to have to target and work on that. So when I'm done this report, it's going to be all comprehensive as far as showing you the data. You'll be able to see that. There's going to be sections in it that review the equipment, the apparatus, the personnel. There's going to be recommendations that I'm going to be placed in there, which I think for showing the direction I feel that we should be going, that you're going to have to make some hard decisions on. And then there's a section in it that talks about cost savings that we're going to see, even when we consolidate, how that's going to play out in the long term. Secondly, you see in the update here, I talk a little bit about the stipend program. Although the stipend program has helped the statistics along, we're beginning to experience a few issues with that. Again, this is a Huntington Valley Fire Company program that's run by the Huntington Valley Fire Company members. Recently, it's getting harder and harder to attract people into this because the pool of people available to get hired or be interested in this are actually going to other communities. There's a lot of communities in the same position we are that are starting to put career staff on. So those individuals are leaning towards that avenue because it's more lucrative for them and it's steady work and it's a guaranteed job. In addition to that, as we get less and less folks, some of our folks' work situations are changing. We're starting to see less and less people sign up. We're having an issue with some drivers. We've had some days where we didn't have drivers established with the crews for that. Chief Middleman is working diligently with his staff and trying to recruit new members for this. We've had a couple come in. There's a list of names that I've seen, but I haven't seen any of these folks yet come to any of the shifts that they have. But again, we don't run that program. That's run by the Huntington Valley Fire Company. There's some limitations with that I'm going to talk about in our report when we do that, but we'll address that at that time. And then the last thing I have here, which to me is a pretty important item, it has to do with naming of our future organization, no matter how it turns out. And there was a lot of discussion going back and forth in regards to this. My goal was to try to get a consensus of the groups as to a common name that both would like to see us do. It's kind of been sped up a little bit with the arrival of the new apparatus that's coming in. I'll talk a little bit of that in a minute. But I met with the chiefs of both organizations. We had a lengthy conversation as to about 4 or 5 different names. One of the names that came out that seemed to be pretty good with everybody was the Fetters Mill Fire Rescue. It was felt that that's a great neutral name. It affects both communities. It's part of both communities. Once that was the direction we thought we were going to go towards, I went out and addressed the different fire companies with that. And there was a little bit of some, not pushback on it, but there was some items of consideration they wanted to know that happened. And one of the members had given me a name early into this process, and I completely forgot about it, neglected to give that out to the group. So I did push that back out to the chiefs for a survey. I didn't get any traction on it. And as it stands right now, that name that I mentioned seems to be the most common name. However, this is not my decision. I'm an outsider. I believe ultimately it's going to be the decision of the leaders of the communities, both communities. I did mention the name last night up the street as well in their meeting, and that's where it stands. And I just wanted to let you know that's how that came about and where it is at this point. But it's time sensitive as far as I'm concerned, because I'd like to see the new apparatus come in that will resemble this new name in the future of the organization. As you all know, from day one and through my interviewing process, I told you I was going to be coming in here and rebranding and starting fresh and giving us a new look and moving us forward into the future. We're trying to do that together as 2 groups. It's pretty challenging sometimes, but we're making some great progress. But I think that's a very important item that needs to be addressed. And if we can get that established as quickly as possible, I think it's going to be better for the long run. There was some conversation last night on that, and it was felt by the folks up in Bernathen that, yeah, that's a good idea, that we need to get this established so we can move forward. So that's where I stand with this report. Again, I mentioned the truck. The truck is coming along well. The ladder truck, I get weekly updates on it. I've been showing Chris the progress on it that's coming through the photos. And it's quite amazing how much actually goes into this piece of equipment. I mean, it's built nuts and bolts and steel in a pile, and it just starts and it just goes, and it's very systematic, but it's not like components that are already built that are put together. It's built from scratch coming up. It's pretty impressive to see. Both fire companies get those updates every week. They send them out to their members, so they're all involved in it and engaged with what's happening with it. We're pretty excited about it. I'm anticipating about the 2nd week of July that they're going to be finished with that truck out at the main plant in Wisconsin. From there, we'll go out and do a final inspection on it. And from that point, it will leave to their facility in Pennsylvania, out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, to do some other work on the truck because it was a stock piece. We're making some changes to it. Myself and the chiefs of Huntington Valley sat down with the representatives. We made those choices, what we wanted. It'll go there for that update and that fit out, and then we'll be receiving it. My guess would be probably August sometime, mid-August at this point. So with that said, the lettering is supposed to happen out the Wisconsin plant. We know it's not going to happen at this point there because it's just too late to do that. But on a daily basis, I'm getting a phone call from the manufacturer wanting to know what we want to do with this, because that's going to have to happen now at the Lancaster plant. And that's where we're up against on the time. So that's pretty much the basis of this update that I provided to you. Again, I'm looking to have that comprehensive report done. As it stands right now, it's 102 pages. I'm still waiting for a little bit more data to come in. A lot of those pages have to do with the raw data that I'm looking at that I think is important for you to see, so you can see how I made my decisions and what my recommendations are. But we'll get that electronically to everybody so we don't waste a bunch of trees to get that once it's available. I want to get it through the Emergency Services Committee first. We'll do a review on it, and then we'll get the final product out to both communities to look at the elected officials of both. With that said, any questions?
Just to clarify, Mark, the first item that you want to go over tonight is the response times and adopting 1711, correct?
Yes, as a metric for us to use as a tool to measure against for the current data that I'm receiving from, or that I'm extracting from both organizations.
Is there any questions from the board on the response data, specifically on 1711?
1720.
1720, excuse me. Sean?
Yeah, I had a question about the standards. And so I think you said it's going to be in the report that we'll be getting very soon, it sounds like. Will you be able to provide any kind of comps relative to like, whether it's Bernathen, other fire stations and companies that are similar in size, similar in sort of township makeup?
I don't have access to their data for that, so it would be impossible for me to do that. However, what I feel is important, this is the standard that we would be held against if there was any type of questioning or court.
Sure. I guess I
proceedings.
wanted to understand. So I could see the percentages that we're meeting the goal. I think I just wanted to understand how close we are relative to other groups that are similar to your point about.
Yeah, I
some
can
companies can
look,
never
Sean, and
hit.
see if I can find things, but
Okay.
short of me going in and trying to let somebody let me look at their data and go through everything, I don't
Yeah.
think I'll get that.
Mhm.
But I'll see if there's anything published nationally that could give us that.
Right.
I'm assuming, and again, I wasn't on the committee that creates this stuff. It's made up of a lot of different folks, not just fire service people. But I'm assuming how they come to their criteria and how they match that time period is based on national reporting that they get.
Sure.
And they take the average there and that's what they utilize. It's like
Okay.
any other standard that's developed.
Gotcha. My other question to this is,
Sean, can I interject for 1 second? Just to clarify,
Yeah, of
you
course.
will be receiving the data from both Huntington Valley and Bernathen Fire
Bernathen.
Company, so you will have both of those.
so we'll have at least those two to look
Yeah,
at.
those two are in there.
Yeah, yeah,
I misinterpreted what you said. I thought you wanted outside.
Well,
as a
I was
comp.
just curious how we stand up
Okay.
to sort of like to other comparable
sure.
fire companies. But I also just wanted to ask with respect to so you shared this sort of from 2018 to 24.
I have
number of
that
incidents,
for
percentages.
Huntington Valley.
Yeah.
The Bernathen will be 21 through 24 because that's when they started with the reporting system
Gotcha.
that they're utilizing.
Will those, since there's 3 measures of hitting the benchmark, will your report break that up so we can understand
You'll
sort of what
see it in the
aspects of
graphs as you go through. Each section will be in there and it'll tell you
Okay.
what it represents.
Okay.
And then it will show you the percentages as you see what I've put down here.
Gotcha. So we'll understand like
It's pretty
what aspects.
self-explanatory once you see it. It's just
Sure.
you got to look at it and you got to try to figure it out. If you have any questions, you give me a call and we'll try to
course.
explain it to you.
All
But
right, cool.
I think it's pretty visible. It's a lot better when it's demonstrative. You can see
Mhm.
it and it's demonstrated right in front of you instead of me telling you something. And again, this is the data that was input by both these organizations' members. It's nothing we're pulling out of a hat.
Yeah.
It's factual information that's there for our review. And it gives us a tool to measure everything against it and plan for our future. And that's exactly what we're
Yeah,
trying to do.
I'm very eager to see it, and I'm glad that it's going to be broken up that depth. I was just curious how deep it goes, and
What
you
you're gonna
answered my
see,
question.
and not to interrupt you, what you're gonna see though is 2 different reporting platforms. So you gotta look at them a little bit differently, but you'll see what it means in the long run.
Yeah, thank you.
And I believe it's just 2 inputs into that data, right? It's whether or not there's between 0 and 4 responding firefighters and the time that it took.
Yeah, there's a little bit of
I
problem
think
with
I
the
misunderstood
data,
the table. Yes, you're right. Two
which I
inputs.
explain into the report when you look at it. It's hard to differentiate in one of the data sets a fire chief responding first versus the suppression personnel in the apparatus. The suppression personnel in the apparatus is what really counts. And I can't break that out. But we can get an average and we can see the times are, a little bit off. We need to do some work and we have to figure out a fix to that process. Particularly in the middle of the night, it gets a little bit longer for everybody to get out. Again, when we talk about Bernathen, they have career staff in, so it's a little bit easier for them to meet the times. There's no reason why they shouldn't meet the times, and that shows us why it's important to have people in station to respond. But they fall short of manpower. And the other thing you're going to see when we talk about on the Bernathen side, everybody's cross-trained paramedic EMT firefighters. So if a fire call comes in the middle of the night, we may be shifting folks off of the ambulance to fill the fire truck to the maximum we can get. And now we've taken the ambulance out of service. So there's some of the things we're going to want to look at and using our thinking cap on how we correct that. And again, there's going to be some recommendations in there on how to do that.
Cool. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah, you answered my questions. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
I have one question and I hope it's a quick answer. So you would ask the question of the board in the very beginning about whether or not we would accept NFPA 1720. I'm familiar with the NFPA standards. I think the NFPA organization does a fantastic job with industry consensus and gathering that data. But your question was whether or not, we would accept those standards. And I guess that my question is, why wouldn't we want to do it? What would be is there a reason that you can think of why we wouldn't want to accept that?
You want a fast answer? The answer is no. The reason being, again, sometimes there's some factors that can come into play that hinders having that ability to meet that response goal. I talk with Chief Milliman all the time. Red Line Road is a terrible road for a firehouse. Because one, it's hard to get our folks into the firehouse, the volunteers, and then two, it's hard to get out. So it may take a little bit more time for your turnout time to happen. There's three things. There's turnout time, there's response time, there's on-scene time. So that can sometimes impact that. Again, that can be corrected later down the road. We were talking about a new fire station in a more accessible area. In my opinion, I think it's a really good area. But until we get there, we're going to have that may be a factor that can give the timing a little bit off. Your travel times from one end of the town to the other can vary from where you're coming from. That sometimes plays a role in it. But in my opinion, again, this is a minimum standard that's built on a national consensus. I think it's spot on. I think it's what our benchmark should be. And unfortunately, if we ever get into a situation where we get into a court case of some sort, the first thing they're going to ask is, are we meeting these standards? That's the first thing a lawyer's going to do. They're going to come in and subpoena our records, and then they're going to start taking it apart, and they're going to look at it and say, well, do you meet this? Some people don't even know what the standard is out there. They have no clue what the standard is. You get into rural areas, which are a little bit different on their times, but not much. And they're not familiar with these type of things. And this is why we're trying to show you what's out there, what we should be using, and the tools we're using to assess our ability to provide efficient and effective service and to protect our public and our visitors to our community. Does that answer your question?
You've answered it. Thanks.
I have a
One
question.
for me.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Mark, just to clarify the response times though, that's dispatched to on scene within 9 minutes,
That's
correct?
correct.
Thank you.
There is, in this national standard, it says minimum staff to respond 15.
Yep.
We couldn't do 15
No,
without,
unless you want to
Exterior.
put on a lot of folks and spend a lot of money someday, that's not going to happen. However, the standard also says you can meet that by mutual aid response agreements, which we have in place, which we use every single day. And we know we're going to use that to meet that like everybody else is. However, we have to provide a minimal response to be part of that. And I felt 4 is the minimal response.
okay,
There's a reason behind that, because there's an OSHA standard that says we have to have on that suppression apparatus, it's called 2 in, 2 out. 2 firefighters go inside for operations while 2 are on backup in case something happens to those 2 inside. We have to follow that standard. There's no 2 ways about it. Even though we're not an OSHA state, it comes into play because we fall under certain requirements on the respiratory protection standard, which is where that comes from.
so the standard we're going to actually use is 4.
That's my recommendation.
Okay, I'm
As our,
sorry, I
as
didn't
our
understand.
minimum response on a suppression apparatus.
Okay, thank you.
And so then the report, just going back to the calculations you're doing, is going to be based off of that standard?
That's
The
the
4.
4 folks,
Okay.
9 minutes, 90% of the time.
Wonderful.
So I have a question now, Mark. Do we have the 4 now and at least 1 driver? And if not, can we try to work toward that goal with our current department to make that happen?
The answer is yes and no. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Even with the stipend program where we're starting to experience these issues of shortcomings and shortfalls, we have our partners up the street that have career staff on, and some of them are assigned to fire. Right now, Chris and I are trying to work out how do we get past the workers' comp issue. If I don't have a driver, then let's take those folks and station them up at the Brent Athens station or bring them down here. As a collective group, we meet that number and response out of there. It's one of the short-term fixes we're trying to get a handle on. But insurance is not an easy thing to deal with. So we're trying to make sure we do it right.
I know that's a certain training and or certification or whatnot to be a driver.
There is
So
a
I'm
a
understanding
little
that,
lot that
sure.
goes into that. And again, we want to make sure they're proficient. The Huntington Valley Fire Company has rules and regulations within their, I guess you want to call them bylaws for the stipend program. And when they bring people in, they're supposed to be qualifying these folks against those standards. I have no say in what happens there. That is a program for the fire company. There are some federal regulations that don't allow us to have any say in that, but I do review and I watch what's going on. And Chief Middleman's well aware of all that as well.
Sure, and the volunteers have lives, so sometimes they can
Sure,
come in,
it's-
sometimes
yeah,
they
it's
can't.
tough. I mean,
So it's
you know,
sporadic, sure.
the bottom
summer,
line is
holidays.
we all have a lot of volunteers in our organization, but the reality of it is not everybody responds as a volunteer or is available to respond as a volunteer. And when you look at the statistics, which are, again, data that's being input from the different groups into the reporting systems, these are facts that don't lie. These are the facts. And that's what we're using for our decisions that we're going to make for the future.
Or, and you're showing us that the demands are getting greater also.
They're very, very tough to meet. It's again, the employee pool, and I'll tell you, not only here, but on the full time, when we're hiring folks up the street for our paramedics, our EMT firefighters, it's hard to get people. And they have a great program up there. They pay well, they offer good benefits, and it's just hard. The competition is so great out there to get people.
Absolutely, and we have a deep respect for our firefighters and all the time and the volunteerism and
And the
everything that
volunteers
they've
do a
done
great
for us
job.
for
They're
many,
so
many years,
dedicated, like
decades.
anywhere.
Over
It's
100
just,
years.
it's hard for us to get them to, be available. The times have changed. And unfortunately, now we're faced with dealing with that.
Absolutely, they're amazing.
Any other questions from the board? Anything from the public? All right, so do we want to have a consensus at this time to accept the NFPA 1720 staffing as our goal for township response times? Is that what we're looking at right now?
Yes, I guess if the board can just affirm their assent to that, that will then allow Chief Showmaker to prepare his report that would measure against that as the standard.
It's my recommendation then that we go with the NFPA 1720 staffing recommendations for an urban environment. Consent from the rest of the board?
Yeah, I concur. It sounds like the right standard to meet.
Yes.
That's a staffing and response time standard.
Yep. All right, you have consensus from the board on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Next issue would be the name. Right now, it seems like everybody's leaning towards Fetters Mill Fire Company. I've been in meetings with Huntington Valley, Bernathen, with Chief Showmaker and so on. It's the name that they're leaning towards. Any comment from the board on the name?
I'm okay with Fetters Mill. What, fire rescue is
They
that?
want fire rescue.
I'm okay with Fetters Mill Fire Rescue.
And just to be clear, and so not everybody agrees with the naming, but not everybody comes to a consensus on anything. This is the most common one that everybody has talked about and felt was a great neutral name for both organizations to move to for a fresh start and a rebrand.
And also to clarify, if this is generally agreeable to the board, that doesn't mean that you're snapping your fingers tonight and
Right.
Huntington Valley Fire Company and Bernathen Fire Company will cease to exist. It
Right.
just gives the direction to be able to plan the next steps with kind of that as the name as part of the org chart, and would be helpful with the direction as the truck is arriving.
And
So-
Bernathen was on board with this name last night up at the
Yep.
Borough Council meeting?
There was no
Right.
decision made by the borough. There was a comment made about the name and they wanted to, they thought, why, they don't want to have a truck decide what the name of the organization is. And my answer back to them was, well, it's not about the truck, it's about the future. And that the sooner we get this established, the easier it's going to be for us to work down the road. Again, clear understanding. We have an interagency agreement that states that both groups stay the same. They keep their identity as we work towards that. The truck thing's speeding it up a little bit, but the bottom line is the sooner we do this, the better it's going to be for everybody. We are planning on by September switching to the number 19. It's the joint station number. We're going to have two divisions, a Bernathen division and a Huntington Valley division as we work that out too. But that was agreed upon by all the officers that operationally, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm working with the county 911 now to get that implemented.
So
In fact, today I sent a letter out to both organizations, their presidents and their chiefs, and said, whatever you have to do to prepare on your end, make it happen.
So the truck's coming in July, and when would it need to be named, say, I think you said what, in Lancaster?
It's going to be in Lancaster probably mid-July.
Okay.
And I
And
have to
then
have it probably before that. 'cause
I
it
just
has to
have
be
one
planned
other
out.
question. How much is it, say, to put a name on it and then say, take it off, just for,
It's about a
My-
$20,000 cost to letter the truck. That's-
$20,000,
That's what's
right.
budgeted for it in it. Now, that doesn't include removing and then reinstalling. So I like to do things once. I hate doing things twice. And that's my position on this. And I think at this point, we should be moving forward. So I don't think the name should be
right?
that big
and it
of a
would mess
deal.
up the
However,
paint.
make no mistake, I'm not the one making the name. I'm an outsider that doesn't live in the community. I think it's important for the leaders of the community to be the ones to endorse the name.
Mark, you had mentioned that, you know, it's, I think for these kind of things that, you know, there is a lot that's within the name. Clearly, you know, within the fire companies that the name is special to them. And we've seen that based on the conversations that we've
Yeah.
had. And I also understand that it's impossible likely to get consensus from everybody that they would say, yeah, we love this name. I just want to make sure though, that everyone has had the opportunity to, one, hear it, to weigh in on their comments, to provide other comments of other names to be considered, that, you know, both fire companies and not just the chiefs, but also, you know, the presidents of the respective organizations and the members that are currently serving, that they have an opportunity to at least hear it, debate on it, make comments. And if that's what rises up, then that's the name that we have. And I'm okay moving forward with that. And I'm also assuming, based on timing, that we don't have, you know, the time to you know, to do other community type outreach events to be able to suggest other names. So if that's the case, I'm okay moving forward, but just make sure that we've given people the comment
some of the names
to
that
talk
have
about.
been talked about and discussed through the group. Obviously, the first one was Lower Moreland Brenathan Fire Rescue, which is what the umbrella organization actually is called right now. The thought process, and again, there's some folks in the audience, correct me if I'm wrong, that are part of it. They felt that that was too lengthy. Okay, that was a lot to say in one mouth. And again, we were working off the pretense of LMBA Fire Rescue. So that's when we put out the call to the chiefs. We sat down and said, look, see if you guys can come up with some names that we can come together on. If we get consensus, I'll champion that to the different boards of both communities for approval. I said, but what do you think? So there came a name, Pennypack Fire Rescue was one that was submitted. Lower Moreland Fire Rescue was one. Again, we're trying to keep a neutral, you know, between the two. Actually, I have a couple of them here.
Yeah, and as you're looking at that, the other comment that I'll make is, you know, if we do settle on Fetters Mill, I hope somebody has done the research to ensure that there's no negative connotations associated with it.
That's what we have to
That there's, you know, there's not something that we find out later to say, oh, Fetters Mill was, I don't know, something that we wouldn't want in the community. And also that there's not another Fetters Mill Fire and Rescue someplace that would cause some other kind of conflict. So, you know, if that's the name that we're landing on, please have someone do the research to make sure that that is a clean name.
do. Yeah, Chris and I have talked about
And
that.
I had asked the solicitor's office to make sure that, say, like, there's no trademark or anything like
Yeah.
that, but negative connotation, I think, is a fantastic bit of feedback.
Now,
Absolutely.
the other thing, Partners Fire Rescue was one that was thrown out recently. I sent out for a poll of the chiefs and didn't get any feedback on it. Huntington Valley Fire Rescue was suggested. There was a little bit of traction with that, not much. But again, that fell into that category of a long name, large pronunciation of it, many syllables in it. My answer, I think, back to the different groups, we want to protect their legacies and what they've built in their organizations. And whatever we come up with, there's going to be some identity of their organizations in there. My thought process was like HVFC established the state, BAFC established this state, with our new organization established this, all on the same seal or patch, whatever we come up with. Because I'd sure like to have some identity myself as we go forward here. But I think it can be incorporated into it to keep everybody, I hope, happy. I don't think we're ever going to get to that point, but it's the hardest thing I've been dealing with since starting this, the name. And every organization that does this goes through that.
I have to say that I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight. But I assume that we would have to make a decision by the July board meeting.
I would prefer that. I mean, I have to give them time to prepare because that goes through a process too. And hopefully we can meet that. But again, the sooner the better. That's my point to you. What do you think of that name? Just off the top of your head. I mean, it's a neutral between two. I thought it was fair because it's neutral, but again, this is not me.
Mark, this is such a deep, touching situation. As a 40-year board member, and my husband grew up in the community since he was, a youngster. And I know, how sensitive it is with both the fire company, and both of them being around for over 100 years. I think it needs to be revisited with both fire companies. So if you could bring all those names back to them. Personally, I like the two names connected together, either Lower Moreland Bernathen Fire Rescue or the Huntington Valley Bernathen, but that's my personal opinion. If you could just bring it to the table one more time, because I don't feel like I could weigh in on it. I mean, Fetter's Mill to me reminds me of the bridge. I mean, it's pretty. It does incorporate both communities. But yes, if we can have, one more month to make a decision, and hopefully both fire companies could come to a consensus, maybe, put a paper in a hat or something like that. You know what I mean? I would like, the one, maybe at our next board meeting.
When we sat down with the chiefs, and the chiefs are actually the ones who produce these names. That's how it came to be. Again, it wasn't a representation of their entire organization, and that was a fallacy. But I think it has to be a limited number of people that I'm communicating to, because I'll tell you right now, I'm never going to get an answer.
Right.
But I did want to point out, when we came up, when the group came up with that name, Fetter's Mill, there was like a 50-50 in the room, or a 50-40 saying, well, maybe just we do the Lower Moreland Bernathen as they came up with it originally. And I was kind of surprised at that, because everybody criticized it at first.
Well, maybe all the names can be, you know what I mean? And they
We
can
can do
circle
that,
it
but
and put it in a hat.
I would be a betting man if I sat here and put a wager on it with you. That
Ruth and I can
we're not
type
gonna
it
get
up. And circle it, right, Ruth?
Well, symbolically, Fetter's Mill is the
Yeah.
bridge between the two communities.
is
So,
a
right, so
bridge,
that
yeah.
it makes a nice patch. It
It
makes a nice
does.
story.
The
But
bridge is going to be replaced in the near future. I was told
Sure will
last night
be.
at a meeting. So
But just one more, one more month,
no, it's fair. And
Yeah.
I'll do my best, but I'm telling you, I'm spinning wheels with it. It's
I-
tough, and that's why I'm kicking it.
I
up
know
to
it's been a
folks.
rough, but just we'll give it let's give it one more month.
And I'm assuming there's comments, because I saw you see some folks. so-
Sure. I mean, does anybody else, Sean, do you have anything else to add?
I think I agree with the kind of consensus that the truck coming feels like a artificial acceleration point, that I'm very much in favor of this process, but it was sort of billed as a long process. It takes time, and this was unnecessarily quick to put a name on a truck that is, there's not general consensus on. We're only really just hearing about it for the first time in this sort of more official capacity, and we got to sort of decide in the next month. So like, my sense is to err on the side of caution and just stick with what we've had until we've really made significant progress in uniting our overall efforts. But generally speaking, I would say if the leadership of both companies pick a name and they're both unanimously agree that this is the name, then I would absolutely back what leadership of the two companies decide on.
So I'm going to provide a little bit more clarity on this. The chiefs of both organizations did meet with Chief Showmaker. So there was probably 7 of us in the rooms. This was the general consensus that was formed between the two organizations.
Yeah, so
So,
like unanimously, the name that they want to go forward with.
yeah, that's what was decided at this meeting. Everybody said, we don't love any of them, but this is what we're leaning towards and this is what we want to move forward with.
Okay. All right.
So it has been thought out, it has been talked about on both department levels. That's what was brought up to Chief Showmaker. That's why we're sitting here today with that name. And what somebody said, the bridge between the two communities, I actually liked that just came up. So as long as there's no negative connotations, I'm a little bit more on board with that.
Is it common to have a more thematic name to a company rather than a,
See a township name associated with an organization, only because it becomes I'm sorry, only because it becomes a quasi-government organization. But there are independent names out there. There's different names, and you know, my opinion, again, I think it just smooths flower. You know, Federal Fire Rescue. It's an easy, palatable thing to say.
yeah, and I guess what would be the expectation moving forward? So the name goes on the truck, but is there other equipment? Is there
No,
other
and
apparatus?
again, even with our number change, and I made this very clear in the letter I sent out today, each group stays as they are, as we have in the agreement. They fall under the umbrella of the LMBA, which is what we have as the mothership, but their identities stay the same until we get to that point, and that point's going to take some time to get to. But I also feel it's important to have a goal and a name that we're working towards, because even if we don't consolidate as municipalities, we're still going to be consolidating as organizations.
Yeah, sure.
We have to survive. And again, both are separate and independent organizations from the communities. So if, let's say, Bernathen for some reason decided as a borough, they couldn't participate, which I don't think is going to be the case. I think they're all in on this. We're still going to have Bernathen Fire Company as part of this process because they are our EMS provider and our fire service partial provider. So it's either way, we're doing something.
Sure, sure.
And just to call that out, I think a part that has been significantly kind of understated through this process is that while the intergovernmental agreement has to be between 2 local governments, there are 4 entities involved. So that in a hypothetical that the borough itself backed out, Bernathen Fire Company remains a partner, particularly because they are providing one of these services wholly within that organization.
And the name isn't just about the truck, it's about bringing these two companies together. And that's what we need to do for the community to better serve all of our residents.
Yeah, I get that.
Yep. How about now? Can you guys hear me all right? The name just isn't about what's going on the side of the truck. It's about bringing those two organizations together to work together to serve our communities.
Yeah,
to be better for our residents.
I totally get that. I don't think I'm hearing that it is bringing everyone together. So I think that's where, if I have concern, that might be where some of that concern is coming from. So like it would definitely, and it would be really helpful to really hear maybe more enthusiasm behind the name. And I guess I'm not speaking to you directly, like to everyone involved. Like if there's a name we can be enthusiastic behind, or if we really need just more time to figure that out, then let's take more time to figure that out. It doesn't seem like it'll stop other important things that are happening.
I've spent a lot of time on this. And I'm beginning to spin my wheels, and I don't like wasting time because I have a lot of things to do. And I want to get these things done in my lifetime before I die.
Okay.
This is a goal I've set to make this work. When I accepted this position, I knew there were challenges, but I want to make this happen. And one thing I know is not going to happen. I'm not going to make everybody my friend. They're not going to want to be my friend, but you didn't hire me to make friends. If you did, you would have hired me as a wedding planner, not a leader. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to lead the group into the future. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with the study. And I'm hoping I'm doing it to everybody's satisfaction. But this is the one hiccup that is holding me up, and it's making me have to go back and cleaning up some things and then coming back again. And here we go back again. We're going to try it again. I've done this 4 times already, and I have not been successful. I've been successful with the leaders of the organizations. They are in agreement with doing this, but when you go to the membership, we're never going to appease everybody, no matter what we do. So until we make that decision, and that tough decision, which is really not my decision, till we get that point done, we are going to have trouble. The sooner we get it done, the sooner we start to mend and heal and move forward. And that's important because it's not about us. It's about the community we're serving.
Sure.
And that's what we got to keep perspective of. And
Oh,
I
of
think we
course, of course.
sometimes lose that.
Yeah.
So.
Chief, I understand where you're coming from, but I also think we need to be aware of the feelings and the resistance that we're getting from our volunteers who have put time and effort and years of their lives into this. And I recognize that we're never going to get 100%. But I do think maybe we could come a little closer to a consensus.
What would you
If-
consider close?
What do I
What-
consider
yeah.
close?
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just,
I'm not
I'm
saying we're going to
frustrated.
ever come to a kumbaya,
yeah, it's not. gonna
okay? But I would like to hear them say, I don't hate it,
Mhm.
okay? And right now, I'm hearing them say, or I think I'm hearing them say, that they want that HVFC.
And I
to
plan
stay.
on incorporating that into it. I
Right.
can't put the full.
Well,
names
that's
of
why
those
I'm saying,
groups.
let's wait for one more month and see if we can find a name that incorporates what everybody is
Well,
looking for.
and again, I'm not looking to put anyone on the spot. I know that there's some folks in the audience tonight. The president of Bernathen Fire Company is here. He's heard these things over and over again. He wasn't part of the chiefs that decided that name. But I think if you ask him what his department and agency thinks of it, I think you're going to get a positive. And that's a neutral name for them. They're not included in any way, their name, other than those two little established things that I was talking about.
I think what we have, I mean, I don't think that we can solve this here. But what I would want to hear is that if Bernathen and Huntington Valley Fire Companies tell you, and they can come up with their own consensus within their organizations, if they're okay with whatever name that we come up with, then that's the name, right? That's why that each of those departments have the ability within their own organizations to be able to drive with consensus. I agree, you're probably not going to get 100% of everybody to agree with it. But if both of those organizations, the leaders, are telling you that that's it, whatever that name is, that's what it should be. Personally, I think it's part of a sales pitch too. And I like the idea of Fetter's Mill, the bridge that's bridging both communities together. I like the idea that you could have Huntington Valley on one side of the bridge and Bernathen on the other side of the bridge of a patch, and you could
Yeah, I
sell
never
this and you
thought of
could
it that way,
rally
but that's pretty
around it,
cool. I
right?
do like that.
So I think, let them vet it out. And if that's the name, I think we have to let the chief lead both organizations, and come up with a consensus. And then that's the recommendation to the board.
Okay.
I did receive a text from Commissioner Pace, who is now attending on Zoom. Leah, could you unmute iPhone number 4? I don't think it means that it is an actual iPhone 4, but it's the 4th number.
Looks like it's unmuted.
I think I did that correctly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I've got I know this is a huge issue, and I've got a ton of feedback from a lot of members within the Huntington Valley Fire Department and residents in general who have come to me in concern with the name. And I mean, part of this big picture is the financing, right? Lower Moreland is on the hook for 100% of this to date. So I think that should have some weight on part of the decision that goes in to naming the truck. That's just my opinion. I don't think we can make a decision tonight, but I think I would absolutely take my time to sit down with members of both departments and see what they think about the name. But I think the fact that the financial burden is on Lower Moreland tax residents right now, we should carry more of the weight of the actual name.
Joe,
That's
just to clarify, right now regarding Mark, it's a 75-25 split. Regarding the truck, Right now, it's 100% on Lower Moreland. We're not sure what, if any, contribution will be from Bernathen, just to clarify.
Right, and when the study is distributed, that is going to become the basis for kind of what the conversation is with the borough for splitting the municipal funding component. And again, a thing to not lose kind of track of in that process is that both Bernathen Fire Company and Huntington Valley Fire Company could hypothetically bring funding to that as well, understanding how each of those organizations are funded. Less likely on the Huntington Valley side because the Board of Commissioners provides essentially 100% of their operations funding. But Bernathen, due to the EMS side, having other funding mechanisms as well that they could bring kind of to the process, which would be a great benefit to the Lower Moreland community.
That good explanation, Chris. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing and how residents feel where we are right now without an actual full commitment from the borough. As Dennis said, great point. If the chief brings everybody together and they come with a recommendation, us as leaders, we adopt that name, right? But I think that we should take into consideration, as Denise said, 100 years and volunteer and all the hours and hard work and the legacy right behind it. That's very important. And I think that we shouldn't overlook it. It's something that I think should go into the decision based on the financial situation to date without knowing what that future holds. And that's just part of feedback. And I can't say I don't disagree with them residents, right? And we could probably talk about this all night about the name, but
So
I think
Commissioner, would you say then it should be Lower Moreland Fire Rescue or Huntington Valley Fire Company?
I love Huntington Valley Fire Company, right?
Okay. And again, I understand that, and I understand the legacy behind it, but again, we still have another partner, whether or not the borough plays or not, they're going to be part of this group. And we got to keep that in mind as well. It's very important in this. And that's why I thought the neutral name was a great way to approach this. And the question was asked me flat out. I belong to two other volunteer organizations. I've spent 40 years in both of them. And I was asked, well, what if this was you and this was happening to your organization? And again, my answer to them is, it's a great question. I would like to see our names involved with it. But I also recognize, because of my professional life, that things change and the future changes, and we're gonna have to adapt to that. And it's a tough, question to answer, but I think in all fairness, to move forward and to move forward in the right direction, some form of neutral name is the way to go, unless you're going to take a municipal name and stick to just that. And again, in fairness to Bernathen Fire Company, how do you think they feel if it says Huntington Valley on it? And again, if we get them both together in some form, shape, I'm all for it. And if that's what they do, I will solicit one more time to them. I'll get with the chiefs and presidents of both organizations, and we'll try to get them in the same room and sit down and talk about it and see where it goes. But make no mistake about it. When we get them there and we come to a consensus, their members may not agree to it. And then those members are the ones that start calling you folks. And that's when things get upset.
All right, let's open this up. Is there any more comments from the board? Any questions for Chief Showmaker? I'm going to open it up to the public
No.
at this time. If you'd like to speak, please come down to the podium, give your name, address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm a little over 3 minutes, just in case you.
That's all right, Mark. You're special.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim O'Neill, 3456 Hillside Drive. Can you hear me? Okay. I just have a quick question about some thoughts. If you need consensus, is there any way you could have a meeting between the fire companies, plural, all the members, the chiefs, whomever, and the goal would be everyone brings their ideas for a name and have a tote board. And by the process of elimination, pick a name. James O'Neill.
Yeah, that meeting already occurred. They had it amongst the chiefs between the two departments. Basically, like you're saying, every name was presented. Some names were eliminated. Fetters Mill was the one that was selected by both fire companies.
Okay. The other thought I had was if I'm listening to KYW and they're telling people to avoid the area and whatnot. And they say the Fetters Mill Fire Company is on the scene. That doesn't tell me, doesn't delineate Bernathen, Huntington Valley, Lower Moreland. It's not informative to me. It's just an observance, but that's how I think. I know you guys worked hard and long on that, but if for the general public, it is not informative of what the fire department is. So that's all I had to say about that. But
Thank you.
I'm glad you had that meeting, and that this is what they picked. And if that is what people like, so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, please.
Yeah.
There you go.
Ed Schultz, 275 Byberry Road. First of all, I think that Fetters Mill is a wrong name because I think most of Huntington Valley doesn't even know what Fetters Mill is. Bernathen does because they got the bridge that's been closed. Secondly, I would recommend Huntington Pike Fire and Rescue. That's a road that goes through both developments, and it is a known road. Next, we know that Bernathen has the money. Everybody's familiar with Aspon Fieldhouse, funded completely by Aspon. They're putting up a new elementary school, completely funded by the residents. No township or Bernathen money's going into that. I think if we give Bernathen a chance to tax exempt, give money towards the new firehouse, then they might have a right to make a name that they like. But that would be an incentive for them to donate tax-free money, which they certainly do need to give away, and get a name that way. But I think Fetters Mill is the wrong road too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Locke, L-A-C-H, last name Brown. I reside at 2559 Pennypack Lane in Lower Moreland Township. Full transparency, I am a life member and the president of the Bernathen Fire Company. And as the commissioners are aware, and maybe the public's not, this process started a long time ago, well before Mark. And at one time, Bernathen and Huntington Valley entered into talks about consolidation. And when that fell apart, the governments, both governments, chose to engage in how can we solve and prepare for the future. So what's in a name and what's important is I want to set us up. My challenge to both departments has always been, if we're the experts in fire service and we know our business, and we have an opportunity from the backing of both governments to make something better than both of us, why aren't we doing that? And Bernathen has been committed to try to form a better, more efficient, more cost-effective, but one that meets the standards that our residents, both communities, expect. And if we keep, my fear is if we keep the separation of names, then there's going to be a tendency for the members, existing or future members, to choose which jersey am I going to wear? Am I going to wear the Huntington Valley jersey? You know, or am I going to? And that's been a problem for us in this in this process. So a name is very important in terms of forming a new identity, which people can support, that volunteer members can engage with, and they can begin to build the pride that's been built by both organizations over 100 years. So it's important that you, the government, help us set up a model for success, not a model to continue with this division that's going on. And so I challenge you to ask your fire company, what is the resistance to creating a better, more efficient organization for both of our communities? And wouldn't it be nice to be a model of cooperation and shared services and caring for each other's communities and model it with a more efficient, more cost-effective, and better protected? I've rarely had a resident on a fire call come up to me and say, "What's the name on the side of that truck?" They see a big red truck. We put out the fire. They're glad we're there. And then they might notice that there's a different name on it. But the name is important. You need to set us up for success to move forward to the future. And that's my goal. It's our continued goal. And our company has been committed to doing that. We're proud of our heritage. We're proud of our little town. We've got 100 years, but we know we can't continue. And we know the right thing to do is start planning now, because if you think it's expensive now, wait till all the volunteers go away and you're looking at municipal funding. So ask yourself the question, why are resisting the possibility of you hired this expert to give you the data to where we have to go? What's the resistance to creating an organization that serves both communities better? We are committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Laura Calfayan, 3231 Maple Road. I'm not sure I respect everything you said. I don't know that there's resistance. I think the key problem is pulling back and looking at it from sort of a macro level. There was, I think, a process was supposed to be in place, and then the matter of this truck came up, and then the matter of naming the truck came up, and it's sort of out of order. And perhaps maybe that's what can be perceived as resistance. Maybe the members weren't ready. I don't know. I'm not part of either fire department. I'm just wondering, as a regular person, if I thought a plan was going to be in place and then this big thing came that should have been happening maybe at the end of the process. I mean, who knows, by the time this all gets sorted out, maybe this truck will be out of commission. But just some thoughts. Maybe one way to come up with a name consensus. I mean, I've kind of heard mixed messages. It sounds like maybe the chiefs were getting together, and so, but maybe not everybody. I mean, it's 2024. We should have everybody's email addresses, the trustees, the board members, employees, volunteers. Put out a survey monkey. Come up with the top 6 names or 5 names and use a email server, an email app that people can use and pick a name. Just so that everybody's involved and the chiefs aren't maybe being put in a difficult position where they're speaking for a mixed consensus. And yeah, I'm speaking out of order because I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. I also believe that, and I don't remember the name of the towns, but somewhere not too far away, I believe 2 fire companies merged or came together and built a new firehouse together. And on one side, there's a garage door that says Fire Station, Fire Department A, and on the other side, it says Fire Department B, which might end up being what this ends up looking like. We don't know yet. And I think that that's part of the unease, is that this now feels more, there's more pressure on the process because of this truck situation. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Go ahead, Jim.
I have a suggestion that might help get buy-in from everyone. Keep the Fetters Mill name and 4 letters, HVBA Fetters Mill, fire company or whatever. HVBA still respects both groups, brings it together. You'll get buy-in from everyone. You may be able to resolve the issue.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? All right, thank you very much. Chief Showmakers, thank you for your report. Chief Shalley, or Fire Marshal Shalley.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just real quick, we're out there doing the fire inspections in the UNOs. We started the process the end of May, and we've sent numerous letters out. I've got 7 properties already lined up for the end of June for the inspections. I'm using the daytime staff who are qualified to also assist me to make it a lot faster. And I'm using the code enforcement officers because we do have some issues that will bleed over to both staff points. So otherwise, just will also want to thank firefighter Bryn Athens firefighter Brian McCabe for a meet and greet and a pre-plan for the park and for the trail. We have definitely have some possible scenarios with the trail, and he put on a outstanding presentation with our mutual aid companies. And that's all I really have. Make it short and sweet. Any questions for me?
Anything from the public? Thank you, Fire Marshal Shalley. That brings me to my liaison reports. First up is the civil service. As you heard, we have 3 officers that we're putting out conditional offers to. And that's pretty much it on the civil service side. On the library side, Friday, June 14th at 2 p.m., the library will have an internet safety class. They also offer one-on-one tech help on Tuesdays and Fridays and some Saturdays. Please call and ask for Jennifer to set up an appointment. Thursday, June 20th at 7 p.m., join the HVL for a lecture about Philly's All-Star. This event will be held in the community room. Saturday, June 22nd from 1 to 3, drop in and celebrate the beginning of our summer learning program. Ventures begin at your library. Enjoy games, crafts, a DJ, and light refreshments. Learn more about and register for the year's reading program. Staff will be able to help you sign up for the events. Recommended books and answer any questions you have about the events there. You'll also be able to pick up a packet of summer learning materials. This will be held in the Red Lion Gym attached to the library, and it's open to all ages. The library has many events for all ages this summer. You can view the schedule at their website, hvlibrary.org. That's all I have. Back to you, President KURITZ.
Thank you, Commissioner CANALE. I just wanted to say one thing to Chief Showmaker, that the board appreciates your leadership and all your hard work, and appreciate you giving us one more month. We really do. Next, the chair recognizes Commissioner Mueller, Chair of the Community Development Committee.
Thank you, President KURITZ. And I thought that the beginning part of the meeting would go a little bit quicker.
I did too.
So I have several items on the agenda that I think will have some good conversation. So the first item on the agenda is review the extension for the the review period for BET investments. And, just by a little bit of background, during the May Planning Commission meeting, BET Investments reviewed their final plan for the project, which is at 3001 Philmont. Following that meeting, notifications went out to the residents in the area, notifying the final plan that would be reviewed tonight. That's been the historical practice, and essentially it was to give a progress report before a final vote would take place. In the interest of meeting efficiency and completeness, the applicant's been advised that the township's preference is to present after all outside agency permits are received. So as such, an extension's been granted by the applicant. The final plan and presentation will happen at a later time. So I know that was originally advertised for tonight. However, that plan will be presented at a later time once everything is received. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay. The next item on the agenda is to review the sketch plan for 90 to 106 Byberry Road. The township's process and laws is to allow for a sketch plan for landowners applicants to communicate the overall project, solicit input from the township's board, the staff, the township consultants, and the public. The sketch review was presented at the March 28th Planning Committee meeting, and tonight is a similar presentation for the benefit of the Board of Commissioners and also the public. So I remind everyone that no vote will occur tonight, that this is an exercise in feedback for all concerned parties. I invite the applicant or the representatives to share the plan with us. But I do want to make one comment. We hear from, we've heard a lot from the applicants and their representatives, and we'll ask the township consultants to comment following the presentation, and then we'll go around the board, and then we'll ask for public comment. I believe that there's a lot of challenges with this particular project. There's including a lot of community opposition. So in your comments, as you go through these, if you could touch on a couple things, and I think that will help move things along a little bit. One is stormwater management and how that will meet both the township and the federal regulations, traffic and traffic safety, line of sight for Byberry Road. And then, I think more importantly, and this touches on a number of things, is how you'll manage actual, and I know I say this with some concern, perceived impacts to adjacent residents, especially those who live downslope of the particular project. And, maybe talk about phase 2 assessments that you'll do, because I know there's some concerns about that property and the aquifers that provide water to the residents on Benton Road. So if you can, as you go through the project for us, if you can touch on those things, and I think that will help answer some of the questions that a lot of us have about this particular project.
Good evening, Commissioners. Vince Fioravanti here with Equitable Owner Val Adamenko, Equitable Owner of 90-106 Byberry Road. Tonight, we'd like to present to you our plan for development of this tract as an RM2 townhouse community with 26 lots. I believe we did give the exhibits that perhaps we can get up on the board. Thank you. As you mentioned in the opening, we did present this sketch plan to the Planning Commission and the public on March 28th for the purpose of soliciting input. We did get a lot of input that night, and we were expecting to get some. We know the history of the project and the special challenges that it does have. Listening to the input from the adjoiners and their concerns, we actually made revisions to the plan. So we have two plans tonight to show you. The original, which I'll just spend a couple minutes on, and then the revised plan that we put together to address some of the comments that we heard. This first exhibit is just the zoning map. The red circle shows the project, and the entire RM2 area here is part of the development. The 4 parcels are being put together. It gives us some options on access. And as you can see, it is the entirety of that area that's zoned RM2. There's also an area RM2 on the other side of the RSD4 district. So the development we're proposing is by right, single family attached, dimensionally all compliant, lot width, lot size, building coverage, use by right, just like the other RM2 situation to the right on the zoning map. If I can have the next slide, that would be the original plan that we went to in March with the Planning Commission. As you can see, this plan, it has the single-family attached units, 26 of them. Again, their ranges in size are 1,300 to 1,500 square foot and footprint area, 3 stories high, so they're large townhouses. And we believe we've addressed all the comments that we typically and concerns that we typically address in any land development. The unique thing here, of course, is the site distance challenge on Byberry Road. And also the on-site parking, we also addressed that in this original sketch. But there were concerns about Byberry Road. We would be looking to reprofile parts of it to remove the hump and provide the adequate site distance. After we looked at this, we were directed to look into some other options. And I'll just move to the next plan, which is the updated plan that we're presenting tonight. Again, same tract, same density, 26 lots, all zoning compliant in terms of dimensional requirements, lot area, lot coverage. You'll notice that the access here, what we've done with this plan is we moved the access to the right, that would be the eastern entrance, as far down as we could. By doing so, we provided the most site distance we could possibly provide on Byberry Road. So when you'll be exiting to the right and looking to the left, the site distance is just about the 400 feet that Huntington Valley, or I'm sorry, that Lower Moreland requires. And PennDOT's requirements are, we believe, to be less, but we realize that moving forward, the very next step would be a scoping meeting with PennDOT and the township traffic engineer to make sure that we're all in agreement that we can exit and enter the site safely in that area. And whatever is required to be done on Byberry Road, of course, we have to do to move the project forward. On the left side, we've changed that to a right in, right out, to eliminate any problems with, site distance up at that intersection. So we believe this is the most significant change to the project. And we believe this gives us the maximum site distance on Byberry Road and would require the minimum amount of improvements to Byberry Road to satisfy all entities that will be looking at it. We're looking at a small decel lane and an area of an accel lane as we enter and exit the site down there on the eastern entrance. When we look at these type of developments, there's always 5 different areas at least where people look for impacts, and we mentioned it in your preamble. Those impacts are, the first one would be the visual impacts. And we look at this site, it would require a Class B buffer between us and the residential communities around us. And you can see we do have a buffer proposed, and it will be detailed and designed as we went through the process. We look at traffic impacts. In this particular case, the entrance and exit to the development did not tie into anyone's local roads, so that all the activity, the trips, all the generation from this development would be on Byberry Road, and we'd have traffic studies, and we believe that there'll be a negative impact in terms of trips from this development compared to the Byberry Road traffic that exists today. The third one was stormwater. And again, when we look at this sketch, even the last one, but more particularly this one, we believe that the stormwater flow to downstream adjoiners on Hillside will be greatly reduced by this development for a couple of reasons. First, it generally flows from left to right on the screen. The installation of the roadways, the perimeter roads would be curbed, would easily intercept all the runoff and rainwater that was normally flowing downhill onto Hillside, would be captured by the roadway that would be installed. And then there would be a system of storm sewers and detention basins that would control the stormwater. And then we had discussed releasing that stormwater, not like the previous examples that I've seen over the years that were developed here, but in a conduit storm sewer that would go all the way down to the Pequessing and release it safely into the stream. So I think any downstream adjoiners here are going to see less runoff when we're finished than they are right now when it rains. And the township engineer will be reviewing the calculations as well as DEP, and will be required to control and manage the rainwater. But I think it'll be relatively easy in this case because of the shape of the land, topography, the perimeter roadways. It'll be easy to intercept. We can control it and take it down to the receiving stream. The other concern that people have with development like this is on-site parking. Where are people going to park? What if they have parties? Townhouse communities, it's difficult sometimes to have enough parking. You'll notice in this situation and in our last sketch, we've set the units back. The lot areas are larger. Each unit can have 4 parking spaces in front of the unit, not even counting the spaces inside the garages. 4 on the driveway, plus 1 each, 26 visitor spots. And with this new entrance, it's 44 visitor spots. So we have 44 visitor spots plus 4 in each driveway. We think that's adequate parking for any situation that we can foresee here. One last thing, and the most important, would be the site distance challenges we discussed on Byberry Road. Again, the relocation of this entrance, we believe, gives us the maximum possible site distance for the property and will minimize the area of Byberry Road that we have to address to provide any additional site distance. The very next step we would take after receiving our input tonight is to have a scoping meeting with PennDOT and the township traffic engineer and make sure that we're all satisfied that the site distances can be met, and that the access to the site is safe. And then we would take the next step and start our detailed design. In terms of sanitary sewer and water, water would be extended up from the intersection down on Byberry, and sanitary sewer through an easement onto Hillside. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them. But again, we're just looking for input. And then the next step for us would be a meeting with PennDOT. In terms of the phase 2 with the demolition of the existing building, we'll of course do that also as one of our next steps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go around to each of our consultants that we have. So I'll start with Tim. If you can comment on maybe things, I know the plan there's a little bit of a different plan. I don't know how much time you've had a chance to look at it, and that this would be true for all our consultants, but maybe just go through your previous report, concerns that you have, and anything with this new plan that you see today.
Certainly, happy to do so. And as we discussed with the Planning Commission, this particular property is very familiar to staff. We have seen a number of applications over the years for use of the property. What makes this application a bit different is that it also incorporates the property to the west, is that 90 or 106, whatever the address is, the old single-family home, which gives this more land mass to deal with as far as a planning effort than earlier applications. I think we have always discussed those very pertinent topics for all of our community traffic. Chad is here tonight. I'm sure we can hear more from Bowman and Chad on his traffic concerns. But the ones that we always focus on, given the topography, given the proximity of adjacent developed homes, the ability to develop infill on steeply sloped ground is a really difficult construction challenge. The interim step, in the ultimate capture of stormwater and conveyance and management is maybe an achievable goal, but really focusing on what happens during initial demolition. First thing that happens is demolition of the structures, tree clearing, some bulk earthwork. That's a really critical time for our neighbors on Hillside and below. And so that's one of the things we really need to focus on as we look at the potential development of the land. Certainly, the capture and management of that runoff would be something that would be really critically viewed if this plan were to come to us in a more finalized design form. The ability to grade in sufficient stormwater storage volumes into that slope would be something that I would be concerned about just looking at this plan. You lose volume when you're grading into a steep slope. It makes, the footprint of the basin need to be larger. So if I'm looking at this plan, I'm not sure there has been enough land area assigned to stormwater volumes. Obviously, that would be something that hard calculations would need to review and approve before a plan could be really considered. Certainly, too, the environmental resource restrictions in our ordinance under our subdivision code, when we talk about woodlands, when we talk about steep slopes, there are parameters in our code that would limit the amount of disturbance and also impact lot size. And so I want to make sure that the applicant is fully aware and is pointed to those sections of our code. Identified those in my March 12th review letter to make sure that you can comply with those provisions. It appears from what I am seeing, especially with this second plan, that there might be some difficulty meeting the steep slope requirements of our code. And so there is a potential that a waiver would need to be sought from that provision of the subdivision ordinance that the applicant certainly should be aware of as you would think about moving ahead. Talking about road improvements as well, ordinance does require cartway widening, curbing, sidewalk, storm drainage improvements along the frontage here of Byberry Road. That would certainly be something we'd be looking for and looking toward if this plan were to move ahead. The other thing that just kind of jumps out is the viability of constructing the sanitary sewer in the easement provided. The physical pipe can probably exist in that 20-foot wide easement, but I just would be concerned about the constructability of a sewer on a steep slope within that 20-foot proximity. There is the possibility that additional construction easements might be required from adjacent property owners in order to allow for the moving of materials, be it stone backfill, whether it's the trench spoils, whether it's the pipe. It'd be very difficult on that slope to stay within the granted easement to construct that sanitary sewer. So those are the kind of things that jump out at me as we look at this plan. But again, it is a very difficult property, given its infill nature, given its proximity to Byberry Road, the steepness of the topography. It is a challenging site for sure.
Any additional comments on, and you brought up something that's a concern of mine, and that's really during the construction period. And I understand, by the comments that you made earlier that, you feel that this will be a great improvement to the existing stormwater flow once the project's complete. But quite frankly, I've seen this land. I looked at it not too long ago, and I'm concerned that once we start clearing significant, vegetation from that and other construction related activities to the residents that are on hillside and, downslope to that. And I didn't hear a whole lot of comments about how much that has been thought through at this point and how we can do that. I don't know, Tim, if you have any additional comments on that or,
Well, certainly, there would need to be, as part of any permitting, a construction sequence that is described both on plan and in permit. And that construction sequence would need to speak clearly to how those downstream properties on hillside would be protected from runoff. I guess there are construction techniques that could be used, temporary diversion swales and berms, temporary sedimentation basins, could be developed, but that would be a real construction critical aspect of the project for
Yes.
sure.
And I agree. A project such as this would have to have very defined stages to it. So when Tim was talking about the construction sequence, it's required on all E&S plans, but in this particular case, when we're looking at tree demolition and clearing and original grading and utility installations, there would be very specific phase sequences, step by step, that have to be protected and inspected so that it would proceed slowly. It wouldn't be an army of construction vehicles tearing everything apart. It'd be very slow and staged so that it could be controlled. And that would definitely have to be done on a site like this.
And one last question, Tim, I don't know if you answer this or maybe, Kurt, during the planning commission meeting, there was a comment about some potential environmental restrictions of a bird sanctuary. Did we ever get an answer to that?
I did not. I'm not aware of any restrictions on the land of that sort.
Yeah, honestly, since I wasn't here for that, that's the first I've heard of that comment. I guess if that is some legal restriction on the property that exists, that would come up in a title search at the point that the applicant would need to show that as part of any preliminary considerations. But Will, maybe you can weigh in.
Right. So, I mean, what I'd be looking for would be some kind of a declaration or an easement against the property, like a conservation easement. I assume you've done that level of title work at this point.
Yes, and we haven't seen anything to that nature.
Okay, so I mean, then the second question would be if there's something that's not reportable, like that it's, in the migratory pattern of some endangered species or something like that. And that's not something that you necessarily would have discovered yet, but that's the other possibility where that could be implicated. I don't think any of us up here would know the answer to that yet, though.
And we would also be required as a normal process to submit what's called a PIND to the government. And they contact all the different agencies and look for endangered species and they report back to us. And if there's any sightings of any kind, we have to investigate and get the proper experts to come and check it out. So the DEP, the Conservation District, Department of Conservation, Natural Resources, they're all going to be looking. And with every project, we have to submit this PIND to the government and they identify any endangered species in the area. So even if there's no conservation agreements recorded, everyone is still looking, and if anything is there, it would come up.
Okay. Frank, would you like to go through your report?
Thank you, Commissioner Mueller. Within your agenda book, there's a memo dated March 14th of 2024, which includes our comments and just, and this has already been mentioned, and just keep this in mind that this is just a sketch plan and our comments are really high level type comments. It's really to get a discussion occurring on this project. But some of the items that I want to point out, and I have a 3 pages worth of comments, but I'm going to focus on 3 or 4 of them. When looking at the plan, the first thing that jumped out at me is the density of the property, right? There's 26 lots, dwelling units proposed. The density is based on the net lot area. And by definition, you have to exclude ultimate right-of-ways, public right-of-ways, easements, and any other covenants that might be part of the property. And so I just want to make sure that, we actually do have 26 units that can be put on this property. It may be less. And just the configuration of the property may lead to less units because of slope constraints and other items. But that's one item I wanted to point out to the board. The second item really revolves around open space. When looking at that plan, the plan does identify some open space. Some of that's consumed by the stormwater management ponds. So we really want to make sure that we're getting good usable open space, right? Accessible by the people that live there, because in that townhouse or that attached type dwelling unit living, not many people are going to be playing in their backyards, right? So they're going to need some open space to enjoy. Don't see really any connections to the open space. There's no trails proposed or anything of that nature. So, as we begin to think about planning and, really need to think about how the people that live in that development can interact with the open space that surrounds them. And how does that open space and that area actually interact with the people that surround that development too? So we need to account for that. Another item, right, is the internal improvements, right? Sidewalks. I already talked about trails and open space. Are these roads public or private? Under this new configuration, there's a cul-de-sac proposed. My understanding is that in order for that cul-de-sac to be a public road and for the township to receive liquid fuel money, it's got to be a minimum of 250 feet long. So there's a possibility that the township may not receive liquid fuel money for that cul-de-sac. Is the township looking to, take over this road network as a public road network? There's parking that's located within the township right of way. So there's questions just about the network, the internal network. And then of course, any public improvements along Byberry Road, right? Potential road widening, sidewalks, curbing, and so forth that would be required by the township ordinance. My last comment, and Tim touched on this, and I think it's one that we really need to take a look at, is just an environmental impact to this property. There's a area of steep and very steep slopes on the property. This configuration shows the roadway being relocated from the previous plan that directly impacts the steep slopes. And as Tim indicated, at this level of plan submission, we just don't have a full detail of the impact to that environmental condition on the property. So, I did take a quick look at this plan. Really, my comments are pretty similar. We talked about compliance with open space, and in addition to open space, there's also the recreational component too, right? Is there recreation involved? Is there fee and lieu involved? What's the answer, to that requirement? We talked about the road network being public or private. I talked about the cul-de-sac. We talked about, significant environmental constraints on the property that need to be addressed. And again, at the sketch plan stage, these are high level comments that we're making. And as, the plan progresses and, we'll get into the more nuts and bolts of the design and be able to comment further if the plan's in compliance. But at this point in time, we just can't really tell if it's in full compliance or not. So those are really, my handful of comments that I have. Again, they kind of mirror what Tim talked about, probably will mirror some of what Chad will be talking about. But again, it's just food for thought for the commissioners. So as we progress along, we can give good feedback to the applicant so they know how to go back to their office and make changes to this plan to make it better for the township and for the surrounding property owners.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I'd like to invite Chad Dixon to talk about traffic.
Thank you. As it has been mentioned previously, our review up until this point has been primarily focused on the access to the site. And due to the challenges of the steep grade and topography along Byberry Road, determining, what the likelihood is that safe site distances can be provided for the accesses to the property. The latest plan, revised plan that was just submitted, as was mentioned by the applicant's engineer, shows some different access locations, pushing them out to the western and eastern boundaries of the property to try and address some of the site distance issues that were identified in our review letter from back in March. I'll first start with the western driveway, which is now proposed as a right in, right out driveway. Based on the preliminary review that we've been able to do up to this point, the right in, right out access, would likely address the site distance issues at that driveway. The issues that were identified in our previous letter were looking to the right from the western driveway, had a site distance issue due to the vertical curve on Byberry Road. The right in, right out configuration would take that site distance concern away. Moving to the eastern driveway, as the applicant's engineer mentioned, that's been pushed to the eastern boundary in order to achieve more site distance, primarily looking to the left from the access point. And there's, I guess, 4 different site distances we look at for these driveways. Looking to the left from the access point, looking to the right from the access point, and then the 2 other site distances that we look at, and PennDOT does as well, is for a left turn vehicle sitting on Byberry Road entering the development. How far ahead can they look to see a vehicle approaching them? And how far in advance a car approaching from the rear can see the vehicle sitting there on Byberry Road. So we think even with this revised access point on the eastern side of the development, we think there's still some challenges that have to be overcome in terms of the site distance looking to the left from the access point, and potentially the site distance looking ahead for a left turning vehicle into the development. And I'll mention that there's sort of township review of this and the PennDOT review as well. And it's important to note that the site distance requirements in the township's code and the site distance requirements in PennDOT's regulations are different. Based on our experience and how PennDOT applies its site distance requirements for the eastern driveway, we think that the requirements that PennDOT may apply may even be more strict than, or they'll need to provide more site distance than what the township code requires. So as the applicant's engineer mentioned, really the next step in this process that's important is for them to start the scoping process with PennDOT if this development is to move forward, and get input on how PennDOT's going to apply their site distance requirements for this particular development. What kind of traffic studies have to be done to address just not the site distance issues, but other traffic issues associated with the site, and then move forward from there, because where the access points eventually end up is ultimately going to affect the overall design of the site in some regards. So that's just a quick summary of what we've been looking at so far. Again, primarily site distances, are the concern at this point.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else on from the township consultants that are either online that want to make any comments, or Jill, I don't know if you want to make any comments?
No, I believe that covers the extent of the township comment.
Any questions, comments from the board?
I'll start it off. So my primary concern with this project is what everybody's addressing right now, is the steepness of that site itself and the downhill effect to the residents on hillside with stormwater management and everything else, and also the erosion control measures that would need to take place. With that being said, the other major hurdle is that slope on Byberry Road. And trying to factor out how you're going to pull that off seems very difficult.
Well, the site itself is a challenge. The steeply sloped site, controlling the erosion and stormwater runoff. I think we've done that on many projects with similar topography. And again, the site distance on Byberry Road, we're going to meet with PennDOT and see what their requirements are. And worst case for us would be that we'd have to trim off an area of Byberry Road to further the site distance, which we can do. But we'd have to quantify with PennDOT exactly what site distance they require. And then we'd have to reprofile a section of Byberry Road to provide it. I think the access location that we have now maximizes the existing site distance. I think we're close to what we're going to need. But again, to really exactly define it, PennDOT has some options as to what they require, and we need to sit down and meet with them. And then again, the improvements of Byberry Road that are required, we'll be able to further define and take care of. So we do have a couple of challenges on the site, but we feel confident that we could make it work. And we'll get started to try to define those things once we get through this and get any other input.
The site itself, isn't it mostly rock in that area?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of vegetation there. The soil, I'm not sure exactly how deep and where the bedrock lays in different areas. We haven't gotten to the point to do soils testing yet, but we will do so.
Thank you.
I sticking on the grading topics, because I know that's one of many things that we're going to be talking about tonight. Can you just talk sort of practically speaking, what's your expectation for, so we look at this cul-de-sac in the center, we see this, ample parking spaces. Are you expecting to have relatively flat spaces for these such that you would need to be really cutting into this space to create? Or are you expecting to have rather steep driveways as they kind of cascade down the hill?
Now, what we'd like to do is the road coming up from the eastern driveway comes up, and there are some sections that are steep to kind of get up to the top of the site. But once we do get to the site, there will be some grading that, of course, we have to do to design everything, but no extremely steep driveways. We have a grade of, 6-7% on some of the roadways. The cul-de-sac is in an area that's relatively level, going across in parallel to the contours, so that can be relatively level. The driveways coming off each site, we would probably go 3 to 4% up from the cul-de-sac to where the townhouses are. And we may have some, with a site like this, we might have some areas where we have retaining walls stepping down elevations in different areas. If you do it right, it looks nice. And I think you'll see some retaining walls here and there on the site, just a drop a foot or two in different areas, but nothing extreme in terms of 8 or 9% driveways or anything. It's not as steep as a mountainside resort or anything. It's some of the areas when you get to the top of the site, they're relatively mild in slope. The steep slopes really exist where that eastern driveway is down along the bottom there.
So Tim, I had a question for you on this line too. As far as our natural resource protection requirements, and there are some sections around, percentage slopes and your ability to disturb them or not. As far as do you know if any of the area of this land or of this particular plot would fall under any of those protections?
Yes.
Given grading?
Yes, I know. And the answer is yes, they do.
Can you take like a minute or two just to help me understand how, when you look at, so it reads, contiguous areas of more than 3,000 square feet, there's certain percentages that can or cannot be disturbed based off of that grade. Can you just
Yeah, so
explain how that
in
works?
general, that section of our subdivision code is meant to address sites just like this. as well as sites that are closely proximate to streams and waterways and wetlands and those types of things that maybe in the past, as an industry, we didn't pay as much attention to. And so I don't know how old this ordinance is, probably 20, 30 years old at this point, but and many communities have similar requirements. And what we're looking at, and especially with steep slopes, is there is some acknowledgement that disturbing naturally occurring steep slopes has a potential to create excess erosion, excess problems for downstream properties. And so there's limitations on the amount of those steep slopes that the ordinance would permit you to disturb. And so it looks like, just from our quick view, that eastern driveway cuts through the vast majority of those protected areas.
Yeah.
And just again, we don't have facts, but anecdotally, it appears that that road would violate provisions of our code. And so, there would be need for waiver from this body to consider in order to build that eastern roadway.
Understood. And sticking in this particular statute, I did have a question. Do you, as far as you know, and I don't know, maybe this is a question for a solicitor, would the aquifers that exist up in here that the residents on Bend Road use for their use for water, would that apply at all here with respect to the hydrological features? I know they're referred to as surface features. So I don't know if that's
It's a good
technicality.
question. And our ordinance does not speak too specifically to that hydrology, aquifers and impact on wells. But certainly if that is a concern of the community and of this board, I think it's a very fair question to ask. And I think that as part of your deliberation, if this plan were to proceed to some kind of preliminary plan application stage, we could ask for hydrologists to take a look at that and opine as to potential impacts. We certainly know that the goal of the NPDES program when dealing with stormwater runoff is to promote infiltration as much as we can. The problem with that in eastern Montgomery County is that our soils are so dense that there's very little infiltration to take advantage of. But as part of the design process, Mr. Fioravanti will tell you, they would have to do infiltration testing as part of that stormwater management design. And that would need to be incorporated into any kind of application for approvals. But again, it's a very similar concept, but a different concept as to impacts on adjacent well water.
And as far as you know, do any of those, is any of the water that is tapped into exist on this property or underneath this property?
I do not know that answer, Sean.
Okay, that's fair. I just
Yeah.
was curious if we knew. Thank you.
Mr. Fioravanti, I have some questions. With regard to this plan number 2, it looks like there's a more increased cement surfacing. How many parking spaces are there with this plan?
This plan provides for 4 spaces for each dwelling in the driveway, 2 spaces in the garage if they have empty garages, and actually 44 visitor spaces. We had 26, and then we have the ability to add additional spaces with the relocated entrance. In our last plan, we had 4 for each dwelling, 1 additional. We had these 2 areas where we had additional parking, 26 spots, and there was still some concern that wouldn't be enough. This could be a provisional reserve parking area if we didn't need it, but I thought the opportunity to have additional parking was warranted, and for some, it was a concern as to where would people park if there wasn't enough parking. If a couple of people had events at the same time, and there's no way place on Byberry Road or anywhere else, we don't connect any local roads. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough visitor parking for the community.
What is the setback from the road to the end of the property?
Are we talking about the, up in this area?
No, the end of the road here. Yeah, the eastern side.
Out here?
Yeah, right there. And at the corner.
Well, we have the road that's 50-foot right of way, and we have another 10 feet here, which is just, we have buffering that we could put in the right of way and for some grading.
Will the trees be native trees or just regular trees?
Well, we'll look to do with native trees. We'll have a landscape plan that we'll be preparing, identifying all the species, and it'll be reviewed by all of your consultants. But typically, we go with native plants.
As that buffer wraps all the way around, I see that it seems to be in the backyards of a lot of these lots here on the,
Yes.
I guess that's the southern side. Does that buffer eat into the lot size when you're trying to calculate total lot size, or is that, can those two things overlap? Again, I'm not
I
sure
believe they
who
can
that question
overlap,
is.
but defer to Tim.
How wide is the road?
The right of way is 50 feet. The cartway we have in the area where the townhouses are, we have that proposed at 25 feet. I know the ordinance would require 30, which we can do. But with townhouse communities with a lot of driveways, it typically doesn't give you extra parking because there's driveway curb cuts so often along in this area at the 30 feet, unless we took it in this side. But we have 25 feet proposed. We didn't feel the need for the additional impervious would provide any benefit.
That blue area, the only stormwater management basin, or is there another stormwater basin in this corner?
We're looking at the potential of using some of this open space for a stormwater basin, as well as this, and the discharge from this basin would flow into that basin on Byberry Road before it was discharged down into the Pequessing.
It's going to be a 55 and older community?
I don't believe that that decision has been made yet.
I think I counted the units. Is this one more unit, 27?
26.
6. I have deep concerns about this property. I've seen one or two other plans on this property. The topography, the steep slopes. I've been out on hillside. I heard the bent neighbors with this aquifers, just the whole construction, how it will be managed and how it would affect their drinking water. How it will be managed in the land disturbance. Byberry Roads is very difficult
Yeah, I
road.
think all of those things would need to be addressed during the land development stages. And not too dissimilar from what we address with every project that we do. And this, I think the special concern here, I mean, topography and steep slopes and stormwater, we address them all the time with every project. And they're always, real issues that we have to address. Detailed plans, detailed reviews. The only issue I think here that's unusual is the steepness of Byberry Road.
Did you take a ride over to Hillside Drive and see how steep the
Yes, absolutely. And
how
I'm not minimizing it. We would definitely have to take precautions and have the proper design. And the consultants would be reviewing it and people would be inspecting it and make sure that it was designed and staged so that there wouldn't be any impacts further downstream. I do understand the importance of it and details that'll be involved in taking care of it.
Where are you bringing in your public water at?
Byberry Road. If we go down Byberry Road to the intersection of Hillside, there's a termination of the water main. It's about here. We're bringing it up and then bringing it in.
You're saying that stormwater basin would catch it and then tie it in?
Run down
Bring it-
Byberry Road in the
Road.
storm sewer and then into the Pequessing.
Is that on the Philly side or where does that intersect at?
That's, if you come out of this driveway and you make a right and you go down a little bit, there's a.
It's in Lower Moreland.
Yeah, there's
It's
a
the creek that runs.
creek
Oh,
that
right
runs
where
right
the
on Byberry
cemetery
Road.
is, where
Yeah,
that
right where
little
the
bridge
cemetery
is?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I have a question about that too. And, Tim, you had expressed some concern from an engineering perspective, the size of the pipe, the construction. But you had also said that there might be a need to acquire additional easements. So I think maybe my question is one of legal one for a solicitor, but could you talk through like what would the process be like to acquire if that were necessary, if they were necessary to get additional easements, what it would take to
So then you're talking about from a private property owner?
from a private property owner,
Well,
correct?
it's contacting the private property owner and discussing with them what they would feel would be a fair price to acquire an easement. And if you have a recalcitrant or a stubborn property owner who says, I've got no price, it's going to be on the incumbent upon the developer to basically redesign to get outside of that or come
we'd
up
have
with
to-
another solution.
Or we'd have to prove that with the contractor that we select that we can construct this and how we would construct it and how we'd stay within the 20 feet.
without, but that's not using their easement. then.
If we can get a temporary construction easement, that's fine. If we can't, then we're gonna have to have the contractor demonstrate how we can construct that and stay within the 20 feet.
Do you have an easement in place right now
Yes.
for
Yeah,
that 20?
that's an existing easement, 20 feet wide. And typically I see in a lot of developments we do, the permanent easement might be 20 feet wide. Sometimes they have a temporary construction easement of 10 feet adjacent to it, that once the construction is done, that easement doesn't exist anymore. And the permanent easements in a lot of places are all 20 feet wide. So it's not unusual.
So then how would water running down into Hillside empty out into the creek? Or in?
Oh, well, the water wouldn't be running down onto
No,
Hillside.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking from a stormwater perspective.
From a stormwater perspective, as we said, that the water will be intercepted by the streets. Inlets in the street would convey it to the stormwater basins. The outfall will go out to Byberry Road in a pipe and then be piped down to the stream.
Gotcha.
So I don't think they're proposing any kind of a drainage easement on an adjacent private
No.
property owner. They're dumping right out into the
Into
right of way
Byberry
and down to
Road
the street.
in a pipe and then down to the stream.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood. I thought the discussion before was that to take the water directly down to the creek by way of installing a pipe down Byberry. Did I
No,
misunderstand that?
that's sanitary
Right.
sewer.
And then, so then did I misunderstand that construction might require additional easements in terms to facilitate?
Yeah,
the
Sean, I
construction
think,
of
yeah, there's two types of pipes that we're kind of maybe intermingling tonight. So the stormwater system would be completely separate, handled in the bed of the proposed road, in the stormwater detention basins proposed for the project. The concept we're hearing is that water will be discharged into a new pipe on Byberry Road, run in the bed of Byberry Road to the creek. The second pipe is a sanitary sewer line that would handle the effluent from these new homes. And that sanitary sewer easement exists through the backs of the properties and then out to Hillside, where it would connect into the existing sanitary sewer system in Hillside.
Okay, yeah, the sanitary one, I understood to go down that
Yeah.
way. I think I just maybe perhaps misunderstood the extent by which construction or moving that water down Byberry, what it might take to do so.
It's going to take yeah. And so that's one of the complications that this developer would face with PennDOT. You know, they'll be installing a new storm sewer system in the PennDOT right of way, which would trigger kind of a tedious, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, PennDOT review. And there's also the complication of PennDOT not liking to receive dedication of storm sewer pipes in their right of way. They're kind of tired of doing that. And they might put that onus back on the town. So that's another hurdle to cross if we ever get to that point.
And if could that have impact on the poles, like, I mean, all the electrical poles,
Yeah,
everything going up there? I
exactly.
mean,
So-
would they need to be potentially either relocate or that whole system?
Yeah, or the storm pipe be built, within the bed of the road to avoid those poles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Understood.
Mr. Fiavani, how large would that stormwater pipe be?
Typically, the pipes that leave the basin, I'm guessing because we haven't designed it yet, but sometimes they're a little smaller than the pipes leading into the basin because the basin holds it and reduces the flow. But I'd say it might be a 24-inch, 18 to 24-inch pipe.
What size townhomes are you guys proposing?
The size of the units vary from first floor 1,300 square feet to first floor 1,500 square feet. And then they could be 2 to 3 stories, so they could be large townhouses, but the footprint's not really large, 1,500. They're 30-foot wide, where the minimum is 25, and then the depth, so 13 to 1,500.
So you're
on the first
talking
floor.
2,600 to 4,000 square feet.
Yes.
They're going to be an HOA?
Yes, definitely.
And what would that take care of? Would it take care of plowing or trash or?
Yeah, it depends. Again, I'm assuming, and I'm not sure that the township would want dedication of the roadways. If they would, that would be fine. But even
I know
if-
the guy sitting behind you does not want this roadway.
Nope. But even if the township accepted dedication of the roadways, typically we always see an HOA required to be formed to take care of open space areas, stormwater piping, stormwater detention basins, So there's always an HOA, even with dedicated roadways. In this situation, if the roadways were private, then they would also take care of the road and the snow plowing and the maintenance as well.
So are you going to have like a little trail or benches or any kind of like little areas like that?
Yeah, I think we can take that as input that once we get the major items out of the way with PennDOT and the access, then we can come back with, open space and trails to kind of connect them.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't like the project here. I don't like the location of the lots. And with it not being a 55 plus, I'd be very hard pressed to even consider this.
I have some additional questions on the, I'm sorry, Dennis, I've been.
Okay, it's your word.
So you had mentioned with the new plan satisfying a 400-foot sightline requirement. Chad, you spoke about a number of different numbers. Could you express how are you getting to to the numbers that you're looking at? Are you using a 25-mile speed limit that is the directed speed limit? Are you using different numbers based off of past studies? And I recognize sketch phase still early, but what numbers are we using right now?
Well, again, there's two different requirements. There's the township code requirement, which is just a number based on the classification of roadway and the speed limit or 85th percentile speed. PennDOT uses actually a more detailed equation. It takes into a number of factors, but it's based largely on, in this case, since the 85th percentile speed is much higher than the posted speed limit. The posted's 25, a speed study that was done a handful of years ago by a previous applicant showed the 85th percentile speed at 40 miles per hour. So in this type of instance, PennDOT would typically calculate the required minimum site distance using the 85th percentile speed of 40 miles per hour. And the other variable that largely impacts what the minimum requirement is the grade of the roadway. So the challenge for in particular, the eastern driveway is the very steep descending grade towards the access point. The steeper of that descending grade, the larger the site distance requirement becomes, according to PennDOT's calculations.
Based off of, because you might not have been able to do it with the new plan, because I know we only had a few days to look at it, but with the old plan, do you recall what those numbers were looking like approximately? Like what would be requirements based off of, well, I guess you wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't be relevant now because
Right. Yeah, we calculated, again, we're not speaking for PennDOT. We're, applying our experience and how PennDOT typically applies their site distance requirements. When they need to go through the scoping application, it could end up being something different, but based off of how we think they typically apply the requirements, the calculations that we did for this revised plan here, we calculated that the PennDOT minimum required site distance would be a little over 500 feet.
Okay.
The ordinance requirement is 400 feet.
that's ours.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Understood. And was it mentioned in the planning meeting that potentially, we're talking about grading Byberry, potentially, or shaving off that top? Is there also an aspect of widening it? Would we have to account for like a left-hand turn to go into, so coming up the hill? Would that be a requirement by either by us or by PennDOT?
Typically, a development of this size wouldn't require separate turn lanes at the access points. That's dictated by the number of trips it generates. This could be a little bit of a different scenario, in particular for the right turn movements into the site, particularly at the eastern driveway, considering the very steep descending grade to the access point. PennDOT could require some type of deceleration lane treatment there. What we recommended in our review letter back in March was to basically widen the shoulder area along the entire property frontage to provide a consistent shoulder width that currently exists to the west of the property, all along the property frontage.
Cool.
And PennDOT typically, in this instance, would require that shoulder widening occur for approximately 100 feet on each side of the driveway, considering the length of the site frontage and that you have two driveways here. We recommended just carrying a consistent wider shoulder along the entire site frontage.
And then that has the impact of pushing back the right of way, but like kind of pushing back everything else. into the-
Potentially, I don't know what do you know what the right of way is offhand, legal? Okay. Yeah, that would have to be something that would be looked at in land development.
All right, thank you.
If I can just interject, I also have very serious concerns about this project, given the topography, the proximity to folks that are downstream, the proximity to the folks that are on equal level, but for the most part, you're above everybody else. So awfully dense proposal with very little, as far as I'm concerned, open space, actually open space. Also, it doesn't do any benefit to the township for this particular thing. You haven't offered us much of anything. And I do think that you will need easements along from the other property owners along Byberry in order to do what you need to do here. It's going to be enormously expensive to do the renovations on Byberry Road, and I'm not sure that you're going to end up with much of a profit margin, but that's just, you know, my accounting background, so I'm just throwing that out there. But I'm sure you can speak to that, and I'm not asking for any response. Actually, I'm just telling you, these are my concerns, and I'm sure as you move forward, you can talk to them.
I'm going to try to wrap this up. Are there any other additional comments from the board? Okay. I want to make one other comment, and then I'm going to ask for public comment in a couple seconds here. I'm going to echo what some of the other commissioners said. I'm not crazy about this project. I think there's a lot of significant concerns, and not so much those that can't be addressed, but you know, for me, one of the biggest concerns is during the construction phase and the impact to the surrounding community. And you know, once a project starts, you're kind of committed at that point, and there's a lot of residents that would have to live through that. So that's a big concern of mine, and I would have to have, you know, quite a bit of convincing, you know, to understand and prove that this isn't going to be a project that is going to turn this part of the township upside down, you know, through this project. So with that being said, I'm going to ask for public comments. I'm going to ask you to come up, you know, state your name, where you live. And in just respect of time, if we've covered some things, I think it's important for you to have the opportunity to make a comment, so that gets on the public record. So even if it's something that we covered, I think it's important for the applicants to hear that. But I would ask that you make your comments brief, 3 minutes or less questions, and make a comment. We'll record everything, and we'll make sure that it gets into the record. So just to move this along a little bit, I know there's a lot of folks that are online. There's folks here tonight. It's already getting late. So keep your comments brief, less questions, but state your name, where you live, make your comment, and then we'll cycle through these. So thank you.
Judy Moss, 144 Byberry Road, which is the intersection of Benton Byberry. And I bet you I know more about that area than anybody else in this room, because I've lived there for 40 years. My husband was a physician and I am a nurse. And by our door, we kept a bucket with a first aid kit, a flashlight, towels, and shoes, so that we could go out and attend to people, because we had to call for 911 on landlines. You remember landlines, right? The question was also brought up about the history of the property. Nobody's mentioned 106 was built in 1742, and the original deed was signed by William Penn, but we're just going to let them tear that down, and the hell with it. The other thing about that property is, this is a letter from Mitch and Rebecca Glickstein that I read to the Planning Commission regarding this property. This property is designated by the National Wildlife Federation as a property that is a certified wildlife habitat. The property is a valuable source of food, water, and shelter and protection for our native wildlife whose habitat is constantly being minimized in Lower Moreland. So that answers your question, Sean. My question is, 4 times a week, as I make my right turn onto my bent road where my driveway is, I am passed by a car going 40 miles an hour. I'm not exaggerating, 4 times a week. I also have a well. I don't know what was stored in the barrels in that warehouse, but I bet there were probably toxins and forever chemicals, given the fact it was 40 years ago when we didn't know about that stuff. So I'm terrified that when the asphalt is disturbed, that some of those chemicals will go into the aquifer. And a word about an aquifer: the water doesn't come up from the aquifer, the water goes into the aquifer from the rain. So if you're going to put all this over green space, our aquifers are going to be, they will be either contaminated or they will dry up. 106, I went to many parties to, and they would have to go use my bathroom because their aquifer was 200 feet further down than mine. So consider for once the people who have lived here and paid taxes here for decades continue to build and not consider our needs and what we have contributed to our community.
Thank you.
Ed Schultz, 275 Byberry Road. I've lived there over 70 years, so I consider myself a Byberry Road expert also. I hope that you're going to finish what you started a few years ago by putting left turn lanes in at Byberry and Pine. That was supposed to have been finished, but apparently you took the money and put it somewhere else, and now there's no money for left turn lanes on Byberry Road. I have a backup of at least a quarter mile to a half mile on Byberry Road going towards Philadelphia, pretty much 24 hours a day, except for nighttime, of course. Thank you.
Hello again, Jim O'Neill. I live at 3456 Hillside Drive, and I've been a Lower Moreland resident for over 30 years. I moved here because of the setting and the quality of life that my neighborhood does provide. For many, our homes are our biggest and best investment and our sanctuary. I opposed this application for this townhouse development on Byberry Road since Lower Moreland already has its fair share of townhouses, and there is no need to embed this development inside an established residential neighborhood and on the most dangerous stretch of road in Lower Moreland, bar none. It's been 8 years since the previous 20-unit townhouse development was presented by the same people. For the same reasons that the proposal was denied in 2016, this should be denied. Only it has 6 more units. Building townhomes at this location would be reckless. It would create safety hazards for motorists since it would induce new traffic and truck traffic and vehicular traffic, and it would cause collateral damage to surrounding homes, all while ruining the quality of life for nearby residents by creating health hazards, pollution, and devalued properties. If permitted to be built along this dangerous stretch of Byberry Road, this townhome development would cause significant impacts such as the Byberry Road speed limit from Hatboro to Lower Moreland ranges from 35 to 40 from York Road all the way to Philmont, except precisely at the intersection of Pine and Byberry Road at the approach to the townhome project area, the speed limit drops down to 25 miles per hour. This is for a reason. The reason is to alert motorists to drive with caution to safely navigate this stretch of Byberry Road due to the frequency of accidents here. The routine disregard of the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, coupled with the additional traffic generated by these townhomes, would create a hazardous situation. Besides vehicles from the 26 townhome families, let's factor in school buses, trash trucks, recycling trucks, etc., and actually fire trucks and ambulances, all entering and exiting on Byberry Road to service this development. Now, I want to remind people, you guys weren't there, but at the Planning Commission, Mr. DuPont called in and he said he remembered when that little factory there at the crest of the hill was functional. Trucks had to pull in and out. They had to have people come out and stand in the roadway in both directions and block traffic so that the trucks could safely pull in and out. While 26 townhome units are proposed, that does not mean that only 26 families can live there. There could be more, which means more vehicles. In a letter dated March 19th of 24, the Bowman Consultant Group stated the average speed is 40 miles
Mr.
per
O'Neill,
hour.
please try to wrap it up. You're over 3 minutes.
I'm sorry. It's like not a game show. This is my home.
I understand. Please try
Other
to wrap it
people,
up.
I watched other people. I'm telling you. Anyway. So the speed limit is 0.5. He's basing 400 feet off of 40 miles per hour. At the last meeting, I brought pictures of 60 miles an hour and 50 mile an hour that were on a poster that were taken at the bottom of the hill when people were going up. So I don't know if you know about inertia, but you can look this up. 400 feet is based on a vehicle. If you have a truck and you're doing 50, you have to almost double it. So allowing additional flooding would be reckless. Regarding the site, these parcels are overwhelmingly soil. We know that. Who's going to bear the costs of all the mitigation that we have to go through? I would suggest that the township be responsible and ask the developer to post a $10 million bond that lasted for 10 years to protect the residents, the homeowners, from contaminated wells, drying up, flooding issues like I'm afraid of. That is different than what was proposed. That is on the hill, in the middle of the hill. That is insane. I go out there and pick up car parts. That's my backyard. That's insane. And don't forget, PennDOT still wants to bring back the Woodhaven Extension project. Byberry Road is a soul. This is one of the sole east-west corridors, okay? And they are chomping at the bit. Maybe you guys don't know it. I've been to meetings in Philadelphia. They are having meetings, and they want to continue to bring that westward into our neighborhood. Just an FYI. This townhome project flies in the face of reason to any person with a conscience. The people proposing this project are acting in their own self-interest and negligently putting others' lives and homes at risk while ruining the quality of life for nearby residents. If this multi-million-dollar project is approved, tax-paying homeowners will be forced to live with the aftermath of the bad decisions made on multiple levels by themselves and the township. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Hi, my name is Tara Huber from 3485 Bent Road, and I have grave concerns about this second proposal of 26 townhomes. I'm a high school English teacher. I'm a high school English teacher and typically revisions are better drafts. This proposal is clearly worse. First, the plan doesn't adequately address the issue of the steep slope and the traffic entrances and exits. The west end entrance exit at the top of the hill, which happens to be my side yard, is extremely dangerous due to the crest of the hill. Just this week, my husband witnessed a motorcycle lose control flying up the hill, slid off the road into the cemetery. The skid marks are still there, and the ripped up grass are visible as evidence if you'd like to take a look. This exact location has been the scene of dozens of accidents and 911 calls in my 18 years at this residence. As far as the east exit and entrance is concerned, this is just as concerning. For those of us who frequently use Hillside Drive, making a left onto Byberry is already treacherous. I can't imagine adding another additional thoroughfare, increase in obstructed views, and increasing the dangerous driving conditions. I urge you to consider the safety implications of these entrances and exits. Additionally, I would like the commission to request data from the speeding tickets that the police have been given in the past 6 months. There's constantly an undercover cop, or now most recently a marked car sitting right there. And that would be helpful for the community if we could understand how many tickets are being given out for speeding in that area. Additionally, the management of the stormwater runoff is a significant concern. The grading depicted in the plan indicates a slope downward towards our neighbors on Hillside, which raises worries about potential flooding in their yards and basements. The additional impervious coverage from the townhouses and now 2 driveways will exacerbate this issue. It's essential to implement measures that will control and mitigate water runoff to protect our properties and the surrounding communities. I'm also shocked at the complete disregard for the well water that the residents of Bent Road rely on. That's deeply concerning. Development's impact on the local water supply and the potential contamination of this vital resource raises serious health concerns and environmental risks for our community. We must prioritize the preservation of our natural resources and the health of our community above any short-sighted financial gain. Finally, it's disheartening to witness the owners of this property exploit our community for their own financial gain again and again to make these attempts. Their neglect of the decrepit warehouse and factory, allowing it to become an eyesore for years, and then their deceptive acquisition of a single-family dwelling under false pretenses with their goal to transform it into an obscene monstrosity of a development is a clear indication of their disregard for the well-being of our community members. We have to oppose this money grab that threatens to compromise the safety, environment, and the character of our neighborhood. I strongly oppose this second proposed development and urge the developer to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Good evening. Sean Hurley, 3495 Hillside Drive.
You're going to have to get closer to the microphone.
Sorry, Sean Hurley, 3495 Hillside Drive. Johnny come lately for the area. I've only been here 8 years, so I don't really compare to some of our my more esteemed neighbors. I'm not going to reiterate everything Jim and the others have said. I agree pretty much with all of it. At 3495, I'm right on the corner of the turnoff to Byberry. The traffic observations are ridiculous. I drive, I cycle. I try not to cycle on Byberry any more than I have to. Turning left across Byberry already is a nightmare. The proposed repositioning of that new driveway, to me, feels like it's right at the bottom of the hill. Trying to turn left when I've already got a slight runway to the hill is crazy. I just can't even think about it. And one other point that I haven't heard of, but I'm curious, and it's obviously too early, but would like to see some numbers at some point. Running the new sewer down and joining Hillside Drive, I just had a quick look on Google Maps. There's like 14 or 15 houses currently feeding into that Hillside Drive sewer system at a guess, given the slope and the direction of things. So we're now going to throw another 26 very large properties, all of the effluent from that running into that. You know, I'm just curious as to what the sizing of that existing sewer system looks like and what a 150 to 200% increase would do to that, because I'm at the bottom of the hill. And yeah, that's about it. So everything everyone else has said and just a few other thoughts. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cindy Horsfall, and I live at 3443 Bent Road, which is basically right up against this whole project. It's right in my backyard. So I feel a strong sense to speak out. So this will turn the township and adjoining towns upside down. Why don't you just consider a simple solution and buy back the land to preserve and support these same standards that are favorable to the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the community as defined by the township on the township website. Ditto on Judy and Tara's comments about prior owners. The prior owners spent a lot of time and money to grow the ecological system and to update the property before they sold it, so a new family could move in and enjoy their new community, including a new septic, which, by the way, it butts right to my property because they had a hard time finding a space to put it. But nonetheless, they did everything so they could sell it to a family, and yet they were deceived by somebody that said they were buying it to be a single family. And we were all excited about that. And now, lo and behold, here we are. So if not saying no to this project for the already long list of what everyone has said already, such as impacting the surrounding community from flooding, where people actually have had to be rescued within the township. I'm sure there were studies and plans and projections when they built the townhomes that they have in place for even here. But who built the townhomes that are at Pine Road and County Line Road just recently? But now there's massive flooding at that intersection every time there's a heavy downpour, which is quite frequently recently. And the whole intersection floods and becomes dangerous for young and older drivers alike. We couldn't even get down Pine Road to get on the County Line Road because there are major road closures. So again, studies, plans sound great, but this is brand new and there's already major issues there that have not been addressed. And the rush of potential runoff down Byberry would be dangerous and unexpected to drivers going up Byberry Road. Ridgeway Park has been flooded all the time. All those homes down there will all be flooded. And this is very dangerous for numerous reasons. But most importantly, this specific stretch of road where this proposal is dangerous at best. And that includes every day the school buses have to go up and down this stretch of Byberry Road, coming up from Philmont or down from Pine Road, where at the crest of the hill, there is a huge blind spot. There is zero reaction time. So having all these new drivers turning in and out of this townhome area, they won't have any reaction time. It'll be too late for vehicles. And the drivers driving up Byberry won't have any reaction time. It's going to just be disastrous. As everybody said, there's already been so many accidents, literal accidents. There's police presence monitoring the road. Nobody goes the speed limit. I fear for all the young drivers on the road and the older drivers and myself. For recently, I just had a scenario where I was driving on Byberry Road with my kids in the car, and somebody tried to pass another car because they weren't going fast enough. And there's no sight line, and they almost went into a head-on collision with me and my kids in the car. And fortunately, nobody was actually hurt because instead of veering into a tree, they got lucky and they crashed through a fence. And I was able to swerve around and miss them, but this literally was a month ago. So the blind spot is real. Somewhere I read 52 cars for 26 townhomes. That is understated. If you drive around Lower Moreland, there's parents, there's high schoolers, new drivers, there's grown children that come back. There's over hundreds and hundreds of cars. You say additional trips during rush hours, 12 trips. I myself could drive 6 trips in and out of my street in a matter of an hour, taking my kids to various places within the township. There's really only one solution that I propose, and that is to buy back the land, or not develop it at all. Just go find another area to develop that would be much better suited for the township and the community. And I'm concerned about the new people that are going to move in there. They have no idea what they're going to be living with, trying to get out on the Byberry Road. You could extend it, you could widen it, you could do all these things, but it's not going to help unless you blow up the road, which, by the way, we live on a fault. So if you're going to blast, we already had issues with the blasting down at Philmont Country Club with that new property, and I live all the way up top here on the top of the hill. So please, please consider this project as a no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm just making sure everyone can hear me. No. How about now? Okay, okay. I just know that it's been challenging in the back to hear, so just wanted to make sure people could hear. My name is Dr. Susan Knox. I live at 3444 Bent Road. And so I had one question that I had asked during the Planning Commission meeting last time that was not answered. And so I'd like to have this just on record for a question. So there was a letter on January 22nd, 2014 that Chris, you had actually sent out to applicant, don't know who that is, indicating that July 2006, the township received notification from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and Philadelphia Water Department that a connection moratorium had been placed on any new sewer connections that are tributary to the Pocusing Interceptor. And so my question was, is this new sewer connection, does that connect to the interceptor?
So yes, however, Philadelphia is allowing certain new
Okay, I just didn't, thank you. Okay, and then the other thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge that I had a number of neighbors that were here with me earlier, but because the meeting has gone on for so long, they have other duties. So there were more of us here before, just like to acknowledge that piece. And then one of my neighbors in a text had actually brought up the point, it was questioned whether or not this would be a 55+ community, and the answer was that potentially it could be. But from the perspective of people who are 55 and up and are generally downsizing, do they really want to be purchasing a 4,000 square foot townhouse? So that's just another hypothetical question to be answering. And then in terms of my comments, I also oppose, as my fellow neighbors have mentioned, oppose this proposed townhouse facility. And so I'll just provide a couple of commentary pieces. So just last year, our community spent months attending zoning board hearings, meetings with regards to a proposed assisted living facility. In the conclusions of law section for the application of Artak Arbgarian of 106 Byberry Road, 2219 from May 1st, 2023, it was explicitly stated that, quote, the property is currently used as a single family residence and is virtually surrounded by single family residences, end quote. This serves as direct evidence that the township recognizes that this area of the community is characterized by the absence of large housing complexes. The zoning hearing board further concluded that as presented to the board, the proposed improvements would substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use of adjacent property. Furthermore, the rejection by Lower Moreland Township of another proposed townhouse development that Jim O'Neill has already mentioned tonight at these Byberry Road addresses reinforces this precedent. Those examples establish that this particular stretch of land running along Byberry Road is unsuitable for the construction of higher density housing. Ruth earlier tonight had mentioned that hold on, I have to read my notes here. She mentioned that this project doesn't really give anything to the township. So I'd like to just provide a couple of comments there. And so just to consider the impact on town resources posed by recent and ongoing developments within Lower Moreland. For example, there are approximately 600 units in Lower Moreland, either recently finished or currently in development. As of March 2024, Crescent Fields, which contains 196 units, still has approximately a third of its units available. The Philmont Ave BET project will add 219 units to the town. The Board of Commissioners should consider the increase in infrastructure from road usage to school resources and emergency services that are still uncertain from the developments already approved but not yet constructed before supporting additional projects. I'll just highlight really quickly, I had a paragraph, I'm sure I'm close to time, basically saying, thinking about the different school studies that have been conducted in the last couple of years and just highlighting that depending on what this facility ends up being from a 55+ or not, but there also may be impacts to the school district and enrollment numbers. So just highlighting that as well. And then, I'm also concerned about the safety aspects. We've all witnessed almost accidents. We've all been, especially being on Bent Road. I have pictures just from last year, immediately after the application had been denied, of an accident that had happened. So there's, a lot of us have pictures of these things. So in conclusion, I do urge that this not get approved, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sure, thanks. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My statement's only one page. I use 14-point font, so I'll try to be fast. My name is Karen O'Neill, 3456 Hillside Drive, wife of Jim O'Neill, the slow talker. I want to go on record as saying that I do oppose this project. I'd like to read my written statement. This project to build a townhouse development on Byberry Road across the Lamb Funeral Home has been alive for over 8 years now, and I feel it's time to put it to rest. There have been many discussions from the residents about the development's negative impacts, as well as discussions by the developer stating how they plan to build the development. Sure, there appears to be enough land mass to cram in clusters of townhouses. The engineers can design the new connecting streets, turning radius to accommodate larger vehicles. The engineers can make the stormwater basin larger. I call it a mosquito farm, but that's beside the point. They can make the stormwater basin larger to collect more downhill water runoff. And the engineers can specify a suitable diameter drainage pipe for maximum water management. But the developer's attempt to address these challenging site conditions to build a townhouse development is a moot point. We have a serious situation on our hands. Since the developer will not acknowledge the legendary danger of Byberry Road adjacent to their job site, and the developer's previous inference, I think March, stating that the residents are NIMBY, well, that doesn't work here, and here's why. The brute reality of the situation is, and the facts that nobody can deny are, building this development will cause the guaranteed daily convergence of truck traffic entering and exiting Byberry Road, regardless of where it is, farthest east, farthest west, at the most dangerous intersection, at the most dangerous location along the 5-mile stretch from Hatboro to Philly. School buses, trash trucks, utility trucks, oil trucks, moving trucks, recycling trucks, delivery trucks, landscaping trucks, and snowplows, not to mention fire trucks and ambulances, God forbid, would now have to navigate this stretch of Byberry Road to service this new development. That's what I'm really driving here. I'm not getting hung up on all the sound pollution, all the light pollution, and all the health risks from the mosquito farm. I'm focusing on the brute reality that these guys could really, I don't think they haven't really lived here. I don't think they really have experienced Byberry, but there's going to be so many types of trucks that I just listed that are going to be like on that stretch of road. So if this project was approved, it would really be a case of reckless endangerment, since it is common knowledge that this stretch of Byberry Road between Pine and Philmont routinely disregards speed limits and has numerous traffic accidents at the most dangerous segment. Without a doubt, building out this location would risk the safety of the new townhouse owners and their children, because at the last meeting, I'm pretty sure they said it would not be 55 and up, as well as the motorists on Byberry Road. So thank you very much for your time. And the last point I want to make is from my days on the Woodhaven Road Extension Project, which is part of our heritage here. So I don't think the developers are aware that Byberry Road is one of 2 east-west corridors in the region that service I-95. So we have Street Road to the north that links to 95, and then our very own Byberry Road has the same function. So these 2 roads, and in particular Byberry, they carry heavy traffic volumes daily. So just going back in time, like 20 years ago, and thinking about that, and then imagining this, it's just totally reckless. So for that, I would ask you to kindly not approve this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, are there any online comments? Okay, all right, I'm gonna wrap this up at this point. I think you've heard from everyone. I think that there's a lot of challenges here, and I guess we'll wait to hear from you. I don't, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I think there's not a lot of folks that are in favor of this for a lot of reasons. So, okay. The next item on my agenda is to review and consider escrow release for the Philmont Country Club. And so I'm in receipt of a memo from Woodrow Associates recommending the release of the first escrow for Philmont Country Club site work. Engineer Woodrow performed the necessary reviews and recommends the release of $4,980,669.70 at this time. Engineer Woodrow, would you like to add any comments for us to consider before I make a motion to release the escrow?
Commissioner Mueller, I don't think so. Obviously, you've seen a lot of work taking place out there. Most of the earthwork, all the erosion control measures, sanitary sewer, a lot of infrastructure is in place. So to the extent that this release is indeed warranted.
Okay. Any questions from the board or comments? Any questions from the public? At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the escrow to release, the first release of the escrow in the amount of $4,980,669.70.
Motion was moved and seconded to approve escrow release number 1 for the site progress work at Philmont Country Club. As described, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The ayes have it. Thank you, commissioners.
Next item on my agenda is the building officials report. I invite Ted Middleton to give us a very quick summary.
This month is we had 67 permits issued. We had 5 zoning hearing board applications. We had a pre-construction meeting with NV Homes for Philmont Country Club. Jill and I attended the PAZO meeting. That's a Pennsylvania Association of Zoning Officers at Doylestown Township. Jill and I, along with the fire marshal, attended a fire sprinkler class at the Montgomery County Fire Academy. We are several properties along Frank's Road. We're doing some property maintenance inspections along with the fire marshal for some fire inspections. And many of our high grass complaints have been resolved. So,
excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
The last item on my agenda is my liaison reports. The first is the planning commission. I think we've talked about the highlights of the last planning commission meeting, which was on May 23rd. And the next scheduled meeting is on June 27th. Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust did not meet in the month of May. The next meeting is this coming week, June 18th. And the only comment that I'll make about that is that they are under an agreement to purchase the parcels of land where the June Fete fairgrounds are held. And that purchase right now is anticipated going through before the end of the month. So they are under a fundraising campaign, and they're encouraging folks to donate to that fund. That concludes my agenda items. I'll give it back to you, President.
Thank you, Commissioner Mueller. First item on my agenda is review and consider the minutes of May 14th, 2024. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments regarding the May 14th, 2024 minutes? No. Any public comment? No. Like to make a motion to approve the May 14th, 2024 minutes.
Second.
Motion's moved and seconded to approve the May 14th, 2024 minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Motion's passed. Thank you. Next item on my agenda, review and consider the June 2024 bill list. Commissioners, commissioners, any questions regarding the bill list for June? No. Like to make a motion to approve the June 2024 bill list.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the June 2024 bill list. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Motion's passed. Thank you, Commissioner. Next is review and consider the records destruction resolution. Let me pull that up. We have our annual list of records eligible for destruction in accordance with our provisions of the Municipal Records Destruction and Disposal Manual. This allows us to effectively manage our records because we have limited space. We have a resolution attached. Everything is listed: administrative and legal records, personnel records, payroll records, general finance records, tax collection, public works, waste management, planning, building, zoning, fire records. Does anybody have any questions? Some motor vehicle crashes, incident reports, parking tickets. Anybody have any questions regarding this?
None of these records are under a legal hold.
They're what?
None of the records are under a legal hold for litigation.
No, if they were, we would hold on to them.
Okay. So we have in front of us is resolution 2434, authorizing the 2024 records destruction program.
Second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve that resolution. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2034, authorizing the 2024 records destruction program. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The ayes have it. Thank you, commissioners. Okay, get to the next. What, hon?
The DC.
I'm going for it. Next item on my agenda is review and consider a cooperation agreement. Is Lower Moreland Township School District DCED grant. Okay. In December 2022, the township applied for a DCED small water and sewer grant on behalf of the Lower Moreland Township School District, seeking funds to offset their stormwater system costs as part of the new high school project. The grant awards were not announced until after the district had completed the work they applied for. So we sought permission to modify the grant scope for work instead of work to instead offset costs related to implementation of 2 driveway improvements for accesses off Red Line Road. DCED gave the okay for the modified scope of work. Now, did we get the second agreement?
No.
No,
We're still waiting
okay.
on the coordination between Bowman and Pannoni.
Okay, so we only have the one agreement that is in our tablet. It's the grant cooperation agreement. So since the township is the grantee, this agreement designates the district as the township's project administrator. So this makes sense to do because the district is the entity issuing the bid and managing the construction. Now, this agreement has been reviewed by Solicitor Rice and District Solicitor Khan and is ready for consideration. So that is in our tablets. Is everyone okay with that? And reviewed that? And tonight, we can move forward with that one tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the grant cooperation agreement with the Lower Moreland Township School District.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the grant cooperation agreement with the Lower Moreland Township School District. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The ayes have it. Okay. Next is review and consider the check signing resolution with the retirement of Chief David Scarrato, and Scott Smith was appointed as our new Chief of Police this evening. We will be authorizing new check signers. Myself, Denise Kurtz is the president, Joe CANALE is the vice president, Christopher Hoffman is the township manager, EJ Lee is the assistant township manager, and Scott Smith as the chief of police. So there is a a motion and a resolution to Resolution 2435, authorizing the check signers for TD Bank attached. Is everyone okay with that document that's attached?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2435, authorizing the check signers for TD Bank as described.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2435 as described. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? The motion's passed. Thank you, Commissioners. Next is the Administration Report. Manager Hoffman.
So the only two items that I'll call out this evening, the first is that we have coordinated the stakeholders meeting for the possible acquisition of the A&C parcel at the corner of Huntington Pike and Buck. So that is all of the different parties with interest, the Academy of the New Church, the Township School District, Borough Council, as well as the Borough School District. And that's to talk about A&C's response to our offer to acquire that property and certain parameters that may make them agreeable to a discussion. So I can't represent what the other entities may feel about that proposal, but we're at least going to give a space for that conversation to happen. If we're successful, great. If not, then we'll come back with a different plan. And then the other component or other item I wanted to report on is that we have our first kind of kickoff meeting with the PBA for contract negotiations tomorrow afternoon. So I cannot wait to begin that process.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Next, Assistant Manager Lee, do you have anything to highlight at this late hour?
She does not have a microphone. Can't do it.
Thank you, Assistant Manager Lee. I am not sure. Next is our tax collector. Is our tax collector Jane Sale on at this late hour?
Thank you, Commissioner KURITZ. The actual collections for township for township taxes, we stand at 90.05% collected. That's the actual collections. Face collections are at 91.84%. The outstanding balance of the taxes that are due to the township, $521,345. The outstanding trash fees are $102,200. The reminder letters were mailed on June the 1st, and they have started to come in for payments, with the face due date being this Friday, June 14th. And I had additional hours tonight from 6 to 8 in the township building, but I will also have them on Friday, June 14th, from 9 until 4:30 in the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Next is my liaison report. I'll make this short. First item on my liaison report, as president, I'd like to make an appointment. I'd like to appoint Commissioner Joe CANALE to the Emergency Services Committee. Commissioner CANALE, you will report to us monthly on that or quarterly, whenever they meet.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna make this as short as possible at this late hour. Lower Moreland School District, I attended the school board meeting Tuesday, June 4th. Their next meeting, their voting meeting is June 18th, 2024. So what we considered the cooperation agreement, that'll probably be in front of them. And quick summary, Ashley from Dewey spoke real quick about their high school project, the intersectional project, and the scope of that, how they're going to have a 2-beacon mast flashing mast arm at both sides of the intersection at Red Line and Valley Center Park Drive, and also a large mast arm. So that's what they'll have there. And also how long it took them to get their highway occupancy permit, approximately 2 years. And they also talked about the grant and how it was successful, about the DCED grant, $60,000 will be put towards the project. And then they were successful in getting some other monies from Representative Genst and also from Senator Collette. Also DEI, our meetings are ended for the year, and all the good work that the committee has done is being implemented and making progress. I just wanted to give another shout out for one event we had in May, which was wonderful. It was a journey to biodiversity. Katie Fisk from Briarbush Nature Center gave a wonderful presentation. She was engaging. She spoke about attracting native plants and increasing a biodiverse garden. We had about 18 attendees, and I want to thank our assistant Leah. It was a wonderful workshop with a lot of information. Thank you, Leah. And Leah is currently in progress of planning a stormwater workshop with our engineer, Tim Woodrow, for September. Thank you, Leah. And finally, I'd like to thank, this really isn't about community events, but Shane Cohen. He's a Lower Moreland High School student, graduate. He won the 800-meter national title at track and field. He's an NCAA champion, and he's now moving towards the Olympic trials at the end of this month. He lives in my ward, Ward 6. And I just say, go Shane Cohen, and everyone, let's support this hometown hero. And again, let's support the Lower Moreland Township Police Department K-9 unit fundraiser, June 22nd, 2024, 9 to 12 at the Lower Moreland High School. They're going to have K-9 demonstration, food truck raffles, face painting, balloon artists, and more. So, and you'll be able to meet K-9 Thor and other K-9 teams. That concludes my agenda items for this evening. Oh, one more item. We had in Ward 6 on Saturday, we had a huge, large pine tree that fell down on Warfield Lane. And I have to thank Steve Werner, Matt Werner, Anthony Greco, and Brent Bagden, who came out, and our police department and cleared the tree, and it was a huge tree, and they brought out their the equipment to trip the chipper, and it was a huge bark of a tree, and that equipment to watch it in progress, it was amazing. So that concludes my agenda. Chair recognizes Commissioner Housen. Public Property Committee.
Thank you. During the June 4th sewer planning meeting, we discussed various projects, one of which is replacing the sewer line through Forest Hill Cemetery, which has right now come to the surface, and we need to lower the existing sewer line and add safe manhole access. Does anyone have any questions about this project? Online? Nope. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertising the bid for the Forest Hills area sewer line improvements.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded to advertise the sewer line projects. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Commissioners.
The next is the sewer department report. Steve, are you interested in giving this, or should I synopsize it? Go for it. Okay, I just made up a new word, by the way. Okay, well, what we have now is the Beth Ayres, I'm talking to virtually no one, but the Beth Ayres station has an average monthly flow of 31 million gallons. While the Chapel Hill plant removes 76,000 gallons. So basically, we have a lot going on in our sewer department, and it's extremely important. I don't want people to forget it. We have some ARPA money that we're going to be spending on fixing some of the, or not replacing some of the small, I forget what they're called, sewer.
Pump stations.
Pump stations, I'm sorry. I was good like 3 hours ago. Now, not so much. Okay. My liaisons are the Lower Moreland Township Authority and the Historical Architectural Review Board, neither of which have met. That completes my agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Housen. Chair recognizes Commissioner Blanton, Chair of the Ordinance Committee.
Thank you. Okay, so first on my agenda today, I'd like us to review a traffic-related ordinance. So normally, I know we did bring recommendations like this in our April and October meetings, but tonight I wanted to bring this recommendation forward based off a traffic study that was recently done, which would be relevant to the beginning of the 2024 school year. So the Traffic Safety Unit received a complaint regarding parking around Pine Road School during the beginning and dismissal times. This particular complaint was around Pheasant Lane. So there's other streets in the area that are designated as no parking, but the south side of Pheasant Lane, which sits between Pine Road and Mark Lane, just south of the school, is not restricted. This results in insufficient road width to allow both traveling and parked vehicles. Any questions about the location or the proposal? I'd like to make a motion to advertise the ordinance, but first I'll see if there's any questions. Any questions from the audience? So I'd like to make a motion to advertise an ordinance prohibiting parking on the south side of Pheasant Lane between Pine Road and Mark Lane at all times.
Motion's been moved and seconded to advertise an ordinance prohibiting parking on the south side of Pheasant Lane between Pine Road and Mark Lane at all times. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The motion's passed. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, so moving on, review of the zoning hearing board agenda and decisions. So first, agenda. So zoning hearing board's next meeting will be next Thursday. That's June, what date is that? 20th. There's only one application, it's a continued application on their agenda. It's application number 24-10. This is the application of Christopher Rowntree of 1525 Nicholas Lane, seeking a variance to allow 5-foot high front yard fence where 4 feet is the maximum allowed. They're also seeking a variance to permit a 224 square foot structure in the front yard where no structures are allowed. This is a corner property with frontages on Nicholas Lane, Stone Mill Way, and Byberry Road. As far as the May meeting is concerned, 4 decisions were rendered at the May meeting. The first one on application number 24-12. So this is an application of Igor and Vera Jaria of 3628 Edencroft Road. They were seeking a variance to allow reduction of the 40-foot front yard setback to 32.3 feet and to allow construction of a 14-foot by 9-foot covered porch, 2 special exceptions to allow the extension of a non-conforming building and to allow non-conforming structure in the floodplain overlay district. All 3 of these were granted. The next application was application number 24-13. This was the application of Andre Levinsky and Maria Vetzin. They had sought variances to permit an increase in the maximum lot coverage from 25% to 41.97%, and to encroach into the 10-foot side yard setback to allow a large walking surface and patio. These variances were denied. The third application, application number 24-14. This was the application of Armin Petrosin of 3420 Greg Lane. He sought a variance to permit a reduction in the 20-foot rear yard setback to 8.5 feet to allow the reconstruction of a deck. This variance was granted. And finally, application number 24-15. This was the application of Igor Zubov of 856 Robin Lane. He sought a variance to permit an increase in the maximum lot coverage from 30% to 31.8%. This is for a garage extension and retaining walls, and a variance to permit the structure to extend horizontally along the non-conforming side yard. The variances were granted. I just wanted to make a small note. There were questions in our last commissioners meeting about whether or not certain applications have been reviewed by Tim and by staff. And I just wanted to say that in instances where that was necessary, the board deemed it a condition to have all plans reviewed and approved as per our normal process. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was recognized in a couple of these where variances were looked at. That finishes my review of the zoning hearing board agenda and decisions that were rendered. My liaison report, as I just mentioned, for the zoning hearing board, also liaison for the building code board of appeals, which did not meet. And so I have nothing to report. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Blanton. Is Commissioner Pace still online?
He texted that we would not be able to hear him and asked that we just throw to Steve to do his report.
Okay.
Since the time, I think everyone has my report, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. The only thing I'll mention is our resurfacing project has started. They'll finish milling this week and start paving mid next week. If you have any questions, you guys can get a hold of me.
Steve, almost all the roads are milled at this point, or?
Yep, they're on KURITZ now. Buck Road will start tomorrow. They'll finish that this week. Okay, thank you.
You, Steve. Well, that concludes our agenda items for this evening. Participation on non-agenda items we will take. Does anyone in the room, would anyone in the room like to address the board at this time? Okay, no one in the room on Zoom?
I have a
Uh,
concern.
Leslie, you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Oh.
There we
I
go.
wonder what- You got it?
Now we can.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to bring up about rental licenses. There's definitely a problem with a rental, and it's actually been presented to the board when Bob was our code enforcer, about the safety of this property. So I would like to see that the township have rental agreements when there's a rental in the township, because the properties, are they safe? And that's the problem with the one that's on Paper Mill Road. Especially when the landlord is not living in Pennsylvania and it's a very unattended. And so it's safety, and it's a threat to the township as far as getting sued with the problem. It's a safety issue with this property. So I do not see where the township has any rental agreements with any of the residents when they rent their homes.
Leslie, real quick, just for the board's information, the request is that the township establish like a rental, like pre-certification program. So any home, apartment that would be rented, they would have to do an inspection by our code enforcement office prior to starting that lease. We can look into the merits and when kind of other examples in suburban communities and report back to the board.
Yes. Yes, it's a real problem. And being a landlord and having properties, not in this district, but in Philadelphia, I've seen it many, many times. And I can't believe we don't have anything like that, because it's a real safety issue. And they need to be inspected. And this property never gets inspected. And it's been a real threat to the community here in our neighborhood. So I'm asking, the board to, to look at this.
We can look into that, Leslie.
All right, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else on Zoom that would like to address the Board of Commissioners? Okay. Like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Good evening.
In favor.